members of the gallery, staff, other people too, which is good to see. Welcome to the council meeting for May 2019. We'd like to acknowledge the land we meet on today as a traditional land for the Kaurna people and that they respect their spiritual relationship with their country, and so do we. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the Kaurna people living today. Also read you the council pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Please be seated. Anybody needs to declare a conflict of interest for any item on the agenda tonight? Right. In the case on leave, we have nil. Apologies, we have Councillor Harris. And Councillor Group is on his way to be here any minute. I'm happy to confirm the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council for Tuesday the 23rd of April and the minutes of the special Council meeting for Tuesday the 30th of April as a true record of those meetings. That's the last. No. Seconder. That's a room to speak to it. Further debate. All those in favour? Yes. Yes. Next report is there for you on pages 1 and 2. I'm happy to move that we speak to it. No seconder. Speak to it. With further debate. All those in favour? Against, this carried unanimously. As was the last one, sorry, unanimous. The next item is petitions. Council member reports and briefings. Do we have any?
I could.
Up to you, Councillor.
No. I just briefly, I attended a meeting last week regarding the changes to the heritage and the planning code. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a lurgy today. And I understand there's another one on the 30th, so some of the elected members may be going this week, but it was very interesting, and certainly there's an agenda item on the agenda today that speaks a little bit to it, but there's still a lot of unknowns, so that's really the concern. So I'd encourage any elected members to go along. I think it's this Thursday the 30th, so check your diaries. It can certainly be good to be able to answer questions of your residents. Thank you.
In the case, move on to petitions. We have nil, deputations nil, motions on notice several. We'll start with item 9.1. Councillor Rick.
Thank you. Apologies if my voice sounds croaky as well. So the first motion is, I'll read the motion in full. The Council Administration prepare a report by June 2019, the Council's consideration on the cost to deliver the Your Prospect magazine, along with the different delivery options available to Council. The report is also to consider a delivery option being an opportunity for local City of Prospect service clubs and other organisations to deliver the Your Prospect magazine as a fundraising exercise for their club or organisation. The reason I want to move this is I would love to get particularly a cost analysis of unaddressed, as we have been doing the delivery of the Your Prospect magazine currently as personally addressed to the letterbox. I think we can find personally some significant savings if we look at unaddressed delivery with Australia Post, and also as another option potentially looking at our service clubs letterboxing it. I know that comes with different risks, and so I thought we can get a report back on all these different options, then we can consider those moving forward. I believe particularly addressed mail that's personally addressed with that plastic sleeve as well, this is so expensive, and it's not necessary in my opinion. But also I need to base that up with facts. So I thought if we get a report back, we look at all the costings, the cost for the plastic sleeve, the cost for personally addressed mail, the cost versus unaddressed mail, the cost and the opportunity for service clubs to be involved as well, and we can make an informed decision. So I'll leave it there for debate.
Thank you. The second. Councillor Barnett, you
yes,
speak to?
Happy to second. It's for preparing a report, and as one that's very keen to plastic sleeve on it, be very keen to see the outcomes of the report.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Rick, do you wish to sum up anything? Good. Put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Next item, promotional notice, 9.2, Councillor Rick, tree planting strategy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I'll read it again in full. Part 1, noting that the City of Prospect Council Administration is currently undertaking a trees audit of all streets in the City of Prospect. The Administration prepare a report at the conclusion of the audit process to develop a comprehensive tree planting strategy, including the replacement of trees. Part 2, part of this report will also include advice to Council on how many new trees are required to be planted, what type of trees need to be planted, and how many of our existing trees need to be replaced or that require additional maintenance. Also include planning and future implications of infill development as part of our comprehensive tree planting strategy. For me, I guess, from my own personal experience, I've found it quite difficult the last couple of months, and the reason I put this motion forward is I found it quite difficult the past couple of months where, particularly in this budget process, of actually thinking, okay, well, how do we know how many trees need to be planted? How do we know what we need to budget for replacement of trees? How do we know if we've gone out there and actually looked at, particularly around what struck, I guess, the Mayor and myself when we did have a meeting recently, is even looking at where we've had vegetation, where we've had trees, and now it's just an empty hole. It's like, okay, well, was that picked up in a budget report or a potential budget report? Okay, well, is that one that needs to be replaced? I don't know, because we don't have, in my opinion, a thorough audit process that looks at new trees, existing trees, trees that require maintenance, trees that have had to be cut down because of ongoing problems. We don't have that information there. And when we're preparing a budget, I've sat there going, well, how do I tell my community how many new trees? How do I tell my community why have we come up with, say, $9,000 worth of tree planting in an area, or 50,000 here, or 30 trees here? Because I don't feel that we've really got that thorough audit process there to make that informed decision. So I can go to my community and confidently say, we need, for Green Tunnel, for tree planting, for Green Tunnel, we need 30 trees, because that's the amount of new trees that have been identified, when we've looked at all the streets. I just don't stage we've got that clear information. I guess that's the whole framework around that. I guess the bottom bit of part 2 is also picking on, and I'll credit Councillor De Backer who raised this in a recent meeting, talking about, okay, well, if we're looking at tree planting, we need to consider planning, we need to consider infill development. So I picked up on that point as part of the motion, because if infill development, as we know, is increasing, and if we know that we say there's a particular street we want to plant 8 trees, but we know there's a block of units that are going to go in and that's going to affect, we need to start thinking about that part of, I guess, infill development now. So we don't plant a tree in a certain spot within a year that has to be knocked down for a future planning application. I mean, we're not going to get 100% of that right, but if we start that conversation now and we start looking at that, we can minimise, I guess, future waste. Anyway, I'll leave it there, and welcome to the debate.
Yes, happy to second. I think this follows from a lot of queries that were on our workshop topic on this, and I think it most probably ties in with some of the work that is already sort of being done, but this just I guess reduces some of the uncertainty about some things for elected members and for the general public when we get asked about questions. And I think it ties in with, there's a new grant that's just been released by the state government for reading. And so I think, like we've done with a lot of our planning and strategic planning, if we know that we can be certainty that we know that we need X number of trees in X part of the city, and this matches up with the heat mapping and blah, I think it gives us more information that we can apply possibly for some grants.
Thank you. Further debate? Well put. Any to sum up, Councillor?
Yeah, the only other point I would make, just quickly in summing up, the reason that the first part of that motion, point 1, says noting that the City of Prospect Council Administration is currently undertaking, reason that is originally when I proposed the motion, it was going to be that the City of Prospect Council do this, but I've received advice that the council are looking or undertaking this works as we speak, so that's why part 1 is worded that way.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Yes. Carried unanimously. And welcome, Councillor Groot.
Thank you very much.
Blame him especially, I told everybody.
Absolutely.
And no cost to us. Which
No
is
cost to you.
in the Item 9.3, Deputy Mayor Larwood, vegetation on Liverpool Terrace.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll read the wording out. That the Mayor and Chief Executive Officer be delegated to forward correspondence to Minister Stephen Noel and Mr Tony Braxton Smith demanding strongly that Department of Planning, Transport and Infrastructure engage and fund a suitably qualified landscape architect in order to develop a proposal for replacement of current vegetation along Devonport Terrace. And 1.2, cease and desist all further project work until this issue is resolved satisfactorily for all stakeholders.
You speak to it.
Yes, I do, thank you. So this is the meeting at Trees. Obviously, we're talking about counting them, we're talking about pulling them out, we're talking about planting them, we're talking about applying for funding. So it's clear that this is a very important topic to the City of Prospect, not only its elected members but also its residents. And there's a few other motions later on in the agenda, which I'm sure we'll discuss broadly. The intent behind this, I think, is to work in conjunction with the other work that's already happening. And I think we all agree that, well, I'm not asking whether we all agree, but I feel like this process has been delayed almost purposefully to back us into a corner where we have little or no option. I think the department has taken a very broad brush approach to what it plans to do. It's feigned interest in consultation, and item 13.11, which talks about a paltry figure of $14,000 as the value of the work which has been done there over many years. So we're not talking about that motion at the moment, but I think we need to use every tool in our toolkit to try to force the issue, to let the government and the relevant department know that we're serious about this. And I think that they haven't really even considered any decent alternatives. I think with the right sort of process in place, we could actually end up in a better place. Not everyone's going to be happy with where we end up, but I think overall we could end up significantly better off if the department actually acknowledges that their actions are going to impact on a lot of people's satisfaction with their day-to-day lives. So that's really what this is about. And as I said before, acknowledging that there's some other work on foot with regards to this, and I hope that the combined efforts of a motion like this and the other work that's happening as well will elevate this to a higher level of importance, and we can actually see some decent action.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Barnett.
Yes. I thank the Deputy Mayor for bringing this motion to us. I think it's understating the palpable anger that many of us feel, and particularly our residents. The Mayor and I met with a few. It was supposed to be a photo opportunity, but that seemed to slip by. But nevertheless, it was a good opportunity for residents down there to say, and the other emails have been sent to our ward, ward councillors, the Mayor and the staff. And I think, if you could have a community consultation process that receives a rating of Z, this is one. We were led to believe that we were going to be consulted. We've been consulting since basically 2016 with our Devonport Terrace residents, and we've put money into the budget for this, but it will absolutely ruin any plans that we had. We thought we were going to be part of the consultation about this, and the department has just driven just absolutely roughshod over us. And I think there's no respect there for us as a local government, no respect there for our residents in that area. And I know that the Mayor and the CEO are arranging meetings and that, so I think they will suitably show restrained anger, perhaps, on our behalf, on behalf of our residents.
Thank you. Indeed. Any further speakers?
Just very briefly, in terms of the photo opportunity, Councillor Barnett, it was a photo opportunity. You did appear in Adelaide Now.
Oh,
You did
suitably angry. I just want to point out two things. One, I might have...
I meant to depress, I'm sorry.
I might, no, I was in that way now. I might have put point 2 perhaps first, because I wouldn't want 1.1 ever to, in terms of historical reasons, to think that we're actually okay with them cutting it down, or we want something to replace it. I think our starting point is actually we don't want trees cut down. So really that point 2 is for me the probably preeminent point, and point 1 is only if we have no other option but to accept that there is some pruning or devastation of our existing trees. So I just want to make that point, that I think point 1 really comes after, you know, we've lost the battle, but we are far from losing the battle at this point. So I just want to make the point. But I'll be supporting the motion and thank the Deputy Mayor for it.
Thank you. Just speaking from the chair, I agree. We should at first seek to retain as much as possible. And, you know, I mean, the state is clearly good at maybe someone could amend it out there. I'm not going to seek to amend it from the chair because we manage the Richie, somebody else could. To say something like that we ask a suitably qualified landscape architect to retain as much, in order to retain as much of the current vegetation as possible, and to develop a proposal to replace vegetation loss, something like that, and to then to cease and desist makes sense as part 2. But I do agree we shouldn't just be acquiescing, and I'll speak more on the item later in the agenda on the same basis. It looks like it's wrong. We shouldn't all do that. The community are very upset. I did have a chance to speak to the Minister today about this topic. He thinks that we're overstating it. I said, well, I don't think we're overstating it. He said, your letter from your department makes it very clear you want to kill everything in sight. And he says, no. It says maybe, possibly down the track. So we designed it at 75%, that's what we're told. So it looks like it's pretty definite to us. There's a drawing of crosses on every tree all the way down to Boyd Terrace. So tell me where I'm wrong. So anyway, he's undertaken to go and have a look. I've asked him to have a formal meeting. That was a bit of a side, meeting with him about another topic. But he's suitably agitated in terms of how his department's looking in terms of looking like killing 300 things, when his colleague in the ministry is looking at sponsoring planting lots of trees. I mean, it's a completely contrary message, and one we've got to keep reminding them of that. Not only will this denude a street down there that has for years cultivated basically a screen against that train line, but it will work completely against the state government's stated objectives of greening and cooling the urban environment. And his own department of planning has set a target for canopy coverage in the metropolitan area that this works against. So it's not just his other ministerial colleague, it's his own department that this works against. So I did reinforce that we're not against any change whatsoever. We just want to work together to resolve it. And I think this motion, if it does get amended to reinforce we don't want the losses, and we want to work on a proposal to replace what has to be lost, I think that speaks to that effort to wanting to work together to get the best answer. But we're not going to stand for just complete chainsaw massacre as the media have portrayed it, which is not far from what's being put before us. Thank you. Any further debate?
Okay then. I'd like to propose an amendment.
Oh, that'd be good.
And I do look wholeheartedly. I just assume other people closer to that area might want to jump in and do it. But I'd like to move that we engage and fund a suitably qualified architect in order to retain some of the existing trees
As much as possible.
as much as possible. Landscape architect.
To retain sorry, we can get after the word retain as much as possible of the existing vegetation, because it's not just trees, councillors.
Again, which is why I didn't want to move the amendment, because anyway,
Appreciate that.
so
So it's possible of the existing vegetation. Based the rest of 1.1 and the word, just from the word develop, I think. And we either put the word architect, landscape architect as it were above. You want to keep that same start from above and then council qualified landscape architect.
yes, please.
Is that what you're intending to amend, and that I'll ask the mover and second?
I'll ask the mover and seconder. Do I get a chance to speak to it as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. Right, we've asked them now. Hang on. Just going to make sure the words right back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ask the architect put in order to, as per above. You've got that.
Especially when the process is.
Right, I think those words are okay, and that makes sense. Now ask the mover if they're happy to incorporate that change. Part 1.1.
I'm happy to incorporate the change.
Thank you. Seconder, once again.
Yes, I'm grateful for council.
Just yes or no, I'm going to let you say yes or no. I'll now seek legal meeting to incorporate that change. All in favour? Yes, that's incorporated. Councillor back if you still wish to speak to it. You have another
Yes,
statement.
I would like to. Yeah, thank you, Mayor, for assisting with the technical details of that motion. Look, I think it's a really important motion. So one of the things that I was fortunate enough to do was go on to the tour of Devonport Terrace when we're looking at what we can do to improve the amenity. I happened to go down on a very hot day, and you have to understand that that acts as a heat barrier to the residents along Devonport Terrace and behind. And so we have a mixture of, native pines and a few eucalypts, and some may say, oh, well, a few of them are scraggly trees and it doesn't matter, and this is just an infrastructure project. And I would beg to differ. This is about amenity, and it's for amenity for the specific area that we've just invested and opened up for new residents to live in, and we're taking that amenity away. Well, we're not taking the amenity away. The state government's seeking to take that amenity away. And it speaks to, I think, what we've been discussing before about consultation and maybe, plans not being in sync. So we're trying to do one thing and then they're going and doing another thing. So I think that's happening a lot. There's a couple of other motions coming up that will speak to that as well. But I think it's really important in these areas where we've got high density, we've got people that have a lot of maybe windows or walls facing west, and with the removal of those trees, that's going to have a huge impact, even to pedestrian amenity walking up and down to the train station. So all these things obviously haven't been considered, and I don't think we don't want them cut down, but we also haven't been adequately we choose to do that or propose something different. So I'd encourage you to support the motion.
Thank you. Any further debate? Further, just to sum up.
And I'd like to first of all thank Councillor De Backer for the amendment and the suggestion that someone might choose to amend the motion. It's well worded now. So yeah, look, a few things. I think we all feel like we're on the same page here. I think that. Sorry,
They're working hard.
I can't do two things at once. I can either talk or listen, one of the two. I think the department should be embarrassed by the fact that they sent 4 employees out to meet us 6 or 8 weeks ago who really didn't know what was in that report and who didn't really have a lot to say. I don't know where our taxpayers' money is going for people to go on a travelling roadshow to support something they didn't really know about, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of the content of the report was news to them and highlighted by the Mayor. So I think that's a point that could be made at some point in time. They should be embarrassed by the lack of genuineness, not the best word to use, genuineness around consultation process. I think that they've potentially delayed this and wanted to back ourselves into a corner where we had no choice. I think we must keep the pressure up here. One thing I probably would add also is that whilst we have done consultation and we've been on walking tours and we've all wrung our hands and said we must do something about Davenport Terrace at some point in time soon, nothing substantial has happened that we've driven over the past 4 or 5 years. We've been ourselves potentially a contributor to the situation. If DIPTI go down and assess that situation, they see a lot of work done by residents. They may not know who's done that work, but a lot of that work's been done by residents. And they see a street which has got the hallmarks of being unloved and uncared for. And we've talked about doing something about it for years now. And we still seem very reticent to actually start doing something about it. So I would encourage all the elected members when in a couple of weeks' time we're, tonight reviewing the budget and looking past the budget, that we ensure that we don't strip the money away from anything that we plan to do down there. We actually get on with doing something to show DIPTI and show the residents that we do care, because at the moment, DIPTI might have a perception that, it's down the bottom of the street and no one really cares. So I'd hate to think that we've in any way contributed to the situation. I don't think we have, but there's always that concern. Thanks everybody for the support for the motion, and I look forward to reading their response and continuing the conversation with them.
Concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against, is carried. Thank you. The next motion notice is from Councillor Pearce, Code of Practice and Meeting Procedures.
Standards. The motion is the council amend the Code of Practice paragraph 7.1 to read: members, not the presiding member, have the option to stand or remain seated while addressing the meeting at ordinary and special meetings of the council.
Would you speak to it?
Just quickly, I haven't been on council for a long time, but I just feel it's a motion that's practical. For the size of our council, we're easily heard whether we're sitting or standing. I think the Mayor controls the meeting excellently, and so I don't think it would affect the way the meetings are held. And I don't think it diminishes from the formality of the meeting, so that's the reason I put it forward.
Thank you. A second. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, seeing that I tried to get this through before, I think having another go, actually my back has been feeling a bit stiff at the moment, so I thought, no, I'll just keep standing. But one of the points, I think, is that when we had this as a trial just really flung upon us when we were in the old town hall, and that is certainly not an optimum place for council meetings, as we discovered. And I think that most probably led people, particularly like the Mayor, said they had problems with trying to see who was the, people moving things or speaking or whatever. So I think that when we get into the new building, I think that would be a good opportunity to perhaps address this matter. And we may find that it will sort of work with better acoustics, with a better seating arrangement. I mean, this is even a great improvement on the town hall when we had that first trial. And so it's really only given one meeting, and then that was it. So I thought, a bit miffed, but anyway, we're here again, so I thank Councillor Pearce for bringing it to my attention again.
Any further debate?
Mine's just a question of process more than anything else. So yes, we have tried. I didn't particularly like sitting, but I'm quite happy that I would have been willing to second the motion to get on the table. Happy for people to have a choice. I prefer to stand. But my question is more about the just the amendments or the motion itself. It says members bracket, not the presiding member. Now, is that part of the motion? I noticed that Councillor Pearce didn't actually read those words out. But the effect of that means that the presiding member has no option. And I'm not sure what having no option means in terms of whether the presiding member sits or stands. So it's a technical issue. But if I can just get some advice on that.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. I'm assuming it refers to the current context, which previous councillor deemed that there doesn't stand. So just get to that. 711 says at the moment, members, in brackets not the presiding member, must stand. And if we go down to 772, there isn't one. It's under the chapter called stand whilst speaking. In that sense, it's really just modifying 711 quite simply to provide the option. You're interpreting it in a different way, which is not unreasonable, but it's...
So could you just read out the original 771 again?
Members, in brackets, not the presiding member, in brackets, must stand whilst addressing the meeting and ordinary and special meetings of council. And this is not required at committee meetings.
Thank you. No, it's interpretation, that's fine. I'm happy with that.
Okay, you're good. Councillor...
I made 2 phone calls and I spoke to elected members, one down Port Adelaide Enfield. She tells me that they remain sitting while they're speaking. City of Salisbury is different. They stand and they speak to a microphone. So I'm happy that this motion is on there. I guess we have a choice and look forward to the debate if there's, look forward to the debate. Thank you.
Good. And Councillor Back.
Just briefly, look, I'm supportive of the motion. I'm always, aware of governance because I think one of the issues before was hearing everybody and being clear who's actually got the floor. So whether it's, like you said, pressing the button, because obviously we're on the video as well, you put your thing up, like, whatever it is, just to let people know that you're the one that's got the floor. So I think just be mindful of the fact we've got to work with governance. But I'm fully supportive of
Special hat.
Councillor Rick.
I do like the motion, and primarily because the motion is worded to give you the choice. And it'll probably depend on, if it does get passed, it'll probably depend on how I feel at the particular meeting, whether I stand. But I actually was at the previous council that I did serve on, it was stand only, and he's been stand only. I just thought that was standard practice right across the board, so I actually wasn't aware that some councils, so I've learned something tonight, I wasn't aware that some councils actually speak, that there's differences, so I learned something, but I like the motion that gives you the choice and then keeps everyone happy, I think.
I just want the chair ask the very obvious question. CEO, we can change this now and we can change it at any time. Thank you. And just speaking to it in terms of Councillor Back, it's a very good point. How hard it would be to know who's talking, who's not standing. Leave that to the chair, me at the moment, and you chair, whoever. That's the chair's job. And the chair has to give this person speaking the right to speak and protect that right. So that won't change. And I'm sure people will work it out because that's where the noise will be coming from. So we'll work with it that way. It will be different, and I won't remind, if this gets up, I won't remind people that they need to stand anymore. That'll be people's choice, and that'll suit me. I've always thought that was an odd thing for the presiding member to have to do. So I'm quite relaxed about this, and if it's a split which it can't be, I'd be voting in favour of it. So I'm grateful for the change, and it doesn't appear to as contentious as it was the last couple of times we discussed, which is good. What are you further speaking to?
That's a brief question. I've spoken.
Brief question.
When
You
you
stand at the moment.
it's a brief question. I had to. When does it take effect by if it's passed now? Does it take
That's a good question. Yeah. See ya. Immediate.
Thank you, Mayor. My suggestion is that it will take effect as of the next ordinary meeting. So, but sorry, I'll ask the question as to whether it applies now or later. I think it would actually apply to the next ordinary meeting so that we can actually update the protocols.
So I'll go to the CEOs and talk about it. Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Pearce, Richardson.
Just quickly, I think, as I said, I think David the Mayor controls the meeting very well, and I think just for practicality purpose and comfort some of our older councillors, it'll be a much better solution. And you've got the option, of course.
Yes. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously.
Very clear.
The council come up next.
Let the Mayor wear the
Not
robes.
many people get that.
The Mayor wear the robes.
Okay.
That wasn't controversial. Item 9.5, Councillor De Backer, Prospect Local Heritage Studio.
Yes, and I will stand for this one. So in response to, well, I'll read the motion first, that a budget allocation of up to 40,000 be considered as part of the adoption of the 2019-20 financial year annual business plan and budget to undertake a Prospect Local Heritage DPA that focuses on investigating the upgrading of existing contributory items to local heritage items, reviewing previous heritage studies and surveys, and this was, I'll speak to that specifically, and identifying new buildings suitable for local heritage listing and new heritage zones in the City of Prospect Development Planning and Design Code. So there was an email that was flying around today by our administration, and that spoke to something about, you know, contributory items, which basically were items that contribute to the street character. There's three levels of, I guess, listing. There's contributory items, local heritage and state heritage. So there are changes that are coming, but we've been through this process before, and when we had heritage consultants before, there were items that were identified by us in the community and consulted on by the community, and some of which was rejected by the state. And it's really interesting how all those listings are neatly packed in these little zones. So currently we're doing housing diversity study. It initially started to improve some of the outcomes we were getting in our development plan. So we're getting changes in our streets. So we might have a street with a lot of, let's use the word character houses. It might be bungalows or villas. And then a replacement comes along. Now, we've seen come through council over the last few years concerns about that. The Prospect Residents Association has put forward a great presentation on some of the good, the bad and the ugly. We've also had concerns about double driveways, removal of trees, imposing massive scale, and this housing diversity study actually started as a streetscape study to improve some of the outcomes of the development plan. Even in our first meeting of this term, Mayor David O'Loughlin, there's another letter to the state government about we can't defend the character, which I think is a furphy. I think we just need to try harder. But one of the things that really protects character is local and state heritage listing. It offers a level of demolition protection to the very things that people love about the area. So if I refer to our website when it talks about heritage homes, celebrating our heritage, heritage is an essential part of the area that we live in and of the future we build. Council encourages the preservation of character dwellings and surrounding residential amenity. Character and heritage give us a sense of place and informs us about who we are and how our society has developed over time. Okay, so that's important to us. And what the DPA does is it seeks to protect that character and heritage. So the difference between a DPA and, say, what we're currently doing, and there's a minute coming up later, is that the DPA actually has a heritage consultant, a specialist heritage consultant that's going on around and looking at the specific, I guess, values that make it worthy of heritage listing. And there are set criteria that's set down, and if we're not looking and if we're not putting it forward, it's not going to happen. And I'm telling you now that the changes that are coming, because they're going to a planning portal as opposed to going to the council desk. You could have the developer who's sitting in Bermuda, you could have the private certifier registered to practice in South Australia, sitting in Queensland, lodging a development application, and this online portal, yep. Now, if there's a level of demolition protection in a heritage zone or a local or state heritage listing, it will preserve some of the character that's already there. And we are completely underrepresented compared to other councils. And that's one of the things that the state government's looking to fix, is the inequity between some of the councils. I would argue that places of Goodwood, other parts of the city, are better represented with their heritage than we are. So I'd strongly encourage you to support the motion, to consider it as part of the budget for 2019-20.
Thank you. You have a second. Go ahead.
Just breaking my record for seconding motions at council meeting. This is very important to me. And this came out of the strategic planning and development committee, basically recognising about the length of time that we've got between, say, now and 2022, when the new heritage and planning things are due to come in for us in the metropolitan area. And the other thing that occurs to me, as a member of Prospect Local History Group, we're all the time looking at different information, and I know that there are other places that we could be adding onto our local heritage listing. And also, I've just written a note to remind us that I put up a successful motion at council that we look at the Prospect Air Raid Shelter for state heritage. Now, I'm not sure whether this will cover that, so there may have to be some amendment about being suitable for local and state heritage listing. I don't know as a seconder if I'm able to amend that or wait for somebody else to suggest that we, because we were looking at doing the air raid shelter of state heritage as a separate thing, but that is going to require a whole lot of consultants' money really to put it all together properly. So I would like that included for local and state heritage listing. So we need to be prepared. It may not cost this amount, but this is the best guess from our staff, from the Strategic Planning Development Committee. I acknowledge what the director's memo sent around about contributing items. So I think part of that, to me, it's more about let's get a consultant in now, start doing it now, not leave it till the next one in well, it might be 5 years' time, the way these things go. And then we found that we've missed the boat, because who knows what the state planning and heritage is going to be. I think we need to be on the front foot instead of the back foot. And I ask you to support that. May I ask a question, Mr. Chair, about how can we get the local and state heritage listing into the motion?
Confirm the CEO while you're speaking, Councillor, confirm that the state heritage listing process for the air raid shelter is already underway.
Yes.
And that's happening.
Right, okay. So, all right, so it does lock us out, perhaps, if we've come across some other jewels that may be thought to be state heritage, but I'm happy to go with the motion then as is.
Can I just seek a point of clarification?
Great question.
Yeah, the state and local heritage is slightly different processes. Yeah, that's what I figured, so yeah.
Sorry, just to expand the answer, there are different processes, but it doesn't mean that the heritage consultant for one can't refer something to the other, and the evidence collected under one process can't be used as evidence in the other. So there are some synergies, but they're totally different processes. Okay, further speakers to this? Okay.
Councillor Goodman.
Just briefly, I support the motion, but just a question on process. What I don't support is this coming to the budget so late. Can I just get some advice from the Director of Corporate Services about what the process will be in terms of this coming to the budget, and whether it would be a rate increase to cover the cost, or whether it would be another project that we would not do in lieu of this? Just want to understand what the budget implication might be.
Director.
Through the Chair, next Tuesday we will be deliberating the budget again. So we will first bring to you the outcome of consultation, and elected member can then listen to the consultation and make any adjustments to the budget. So next Tuesday we will be going through the budget process with the final recommendation to council in June council meeting.
Okay. No, I'm happy that I just didn't want it to come to us as a final product and then having to debate on the floor on the night about whether we put it in. So if it comes back to workshop, I'm happy with that.
Further debate? Councillor Back, if you wish to sum up.
Yes, I do. So some really good points raised around the floor, and it is for consideration for this budget. So I mean, it'll come back on the night, and obviously things will go up and down or whatever. But and part of the timing for this, and I'll quote Deputy Mayor Larwood in regards to some of the consultation. I think it was roughshod and lack of community consultation, and there seems to be some similar things going on. It is a bit smoke and mirrors, but there's a lot of confusion of what contributory items are and what local heritage listing is. But as you can see from our strategic plan, our community loves our heritage or character or whatever it is they refer to it. A lot of people assume that their street or the beautiful building across the road is already listed. So there's a lot of assumptions out there, and it would really be good to have a heritage expert who knows their stuff going around and working with us to say, look, this is worth protecting, because it's not so much that we've got some protections at the moment, but we've also got a very supportive council staff at the desk. That process is going to radically change, and it's what if the computer says no or the computer says yes, and that's really where we need to be in the Excel spreadsheet with some areas or properties that have protection. So to encourage you to support the motion to be considered for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Next item, questions on notice. Councillor Witt, on the shopping centre and surrounding area.
Certainly, thanks, Mayor. Question 1, is council in the position to advise when the new supermarket and the Collinswood Shopping Centre will be opening this year?
I'll give you the answer. Council administration's recently spoken with representatives of the new supermarket and the Collinswood Shopping Centre, and they've indicated they'll be open in mid to late June 2019. Second question.
Thank you. Question 2, what are the expected traffic implications for Cassie Street, Harley Street and Redmond Street when the new supermarket opens in the Collinswood Shopping Centre?
The answer provided to me is that as the new supermarket is occupying the same location as the previous supermarket, it's envisaged that in the long term there will be no adverse traffic implications for surrounding streets. It is acknowledged that when the supermarket opens, in the short term there may be an increase in patronage from normal trading patterns. Council's community safety officers will regularly inspect the surrounding streets during this time to ensure that our community are parking legally and safely. Item 10.2, Councillor Ripp, which is you again, line marking service stand. Thank you.
Question 1A, does the City of Prospect Council have a service standard surrounding the consistency of yellow line marking to mark from the start of an intersection to the 10-metre line at intersections?
The answer provided to me is the Australian Road Rules, the AAR, have been made the regulations of the Road Traffic Act South Australia and came into operation in South Australia on the 1st December 1999. Local councils are authorised to issue infringement notices for offences defined in Part 12 of the Australian Road Rules in 1999. The rules were developed by the National Road Transport Commission, state and territory transport agencies, police and other organisations, and have introduced uniform and consistent road rules throughout Australia. The purpose was to simplify enforcement, whereby it is expected that interstate motorists driving in parking in South Australia would be aware of the relevant parking and traffic signage to drive and park accordingly. Thank you, Director, for this extensive answer. Eliminating the requirement to install yellow line marking. Prior to 1999, in accordance with the local government parking regulations, SA councils often installed yellow line marking around corners of intersections and line marking across adjacent driveways. This was also a South Australian rule that required the public to park 1.8 metres from a driveway and many roads are marked in the linear distance. This was an extremely expensive and time-consuming task for all councils, so adopting that ARR was not achieved for councils to review line marking practices. Dicky invited councils to information sessions to discuss applying a uniform approach to line marking and confirmed there was no legal requirement to refresh or install new lines for various parking controls. Of course, each council could decide on the need for line marking within their jurisdiction, but the majority of South Australian councils adopted the approach to not refresh existing unnecessary line marking and no longer install new lines at intersections, driveways, etc. Accordingly, the City of Prospect ceased refreshing existing and installing any new line marking that is possible without line marking, subject to detailed investigation. An example is that as drivers must park a minimum of 10 metres from an unsignalised intersection corner, it's the driver's responsibility to check the distance of parking according to the law. There are high traffic areas that may require line marking to improve road safety. Prospect Road means road traffic road schools, hospitals. However, the majority of the local road network can be managed and enforced without line marking. Please note that all fire hydrants are South Australian Water's responsibility, which includes maintaining the yellow line marking and the blue cat's eyes. However, there are ongoing issues with people parked over hydrants. Council will refresh the line marking. Well, there's news for us all, isn't it?
Probably cut in part A, but thank you. Question 1B, you wanted the service standard details surrounding question 1A, but I think you need to read the full thing.
Answer. Councillor Pearce, you may feel compelled to change this rule too. Cars must not park in yellow line. For safety reasons, yellow lines will place for your road safety. No stopping on the road with yellow light. Pitch line, Australian Road Rule number 169. Must not park or stop beside the road marked continuous yellow edge line. Expiation notices are given to vehicles that park too close to an intersection. Parking near an intersection, Road Rule, Australian Road Rule number 170 part 3. Must stop within 10 metres. The nearest point of an intersecting road or at an intersection without traffic lights, parking is permitted by a traffic control sign. This also includes laneways which are classified as a road for Australian road for purposes. Expiation notice given to vehicles that park too close to an intersection. The City of Prospect does not refresh existing or installing any new line marking that is enforceable without line marking. Unless the location warrants, e.g. local roads intersecting with main roads. Question 1C.
Question 1C, is there any scope to expand this service standard if one exists from questions 1A and 1B?
We should be allocated 15,000 annually to line marking in draft 2019-20, annual business plan, 25,000 allocated to line marking to ensure existing traffic control devices, i.e. speed humps, and zigzag line marking are maintained. There are no restrictions placed on councils to install new line marking. Council were to recommence refreshing existing line marking that is enforceable without line marking, i.e. yellow line marking displaying 10 metres from an unsignalised intersection corner, the annual budget would need to be increased to 30 to 35,000. City of Prospect strives to encourage legal and safe driving. This in turn will lead to reduced congestion and improved safety for road users. It also allows buses and service vehicles to operate more effectively through the general environment and enable council to control and manage parking for our communities. Council administration is currently developing an educational pamphlet to inform the residents and visitors with the relevant Australian road rules. Thank you for that comprehensive reply. I just need to see you say, there's a whole lot of information in there for me.
Yeah.
It would have really handy to come to at some stage. I'm not sure to point out, but that's what we've been placed for a while. So that's good to see here. Item 10.3, Council Written Petition Policy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Question, does the City of Prospect Council have any plans in the near future to review our petitions policy?
Is there any more to this answer? Is that it? Answer to this one? The petitions policy is scheduled for review and a report will be prepared for the August Council meeting. Excellent. Thank you for those questions on notice. Questions without notice. I have one from the Chair actually, which I'll start with. This is something that can help me understand the status of the design for repaving or landscaping or trees outside the town hall, behind the town hall and Vine Plaza, which has been spoken about a lot. We've seen nothing come to us.
For the Chair, potentially Director Bradley will have an answer as well, but under the CLIP project there's been a fair bit of talk about it, but it hasn't been part of the works ever budgeted under the $80 million bracket.
other than the paving and small portion of landscaping in the planted bed right out the front of essentially the new build. The paving will extend a little bit beyond that because that needed to do so because of the level increase or the level changes that were in that vicinity, that the works around the majority of Lion Plaza haven't ever been funded within the other. They've been talked about a lot, granted, and they've been talked about with the infrastructure team in terms of what projects they could fit within or what budget lines they could fit within, but it hasn't progressed beyond that talk.
Thank you. So this follow-up question, I haven't asked about doing it or funding it, I'm after the design for it. Are you saying that there's been no design work done, no discussion about design? That's really my question, is about design and design. Funding is our issue.
Through the chair, as many elected members would know, we've undertaken some initial sketches, some options in terms of how the Wine Plaza could look. Currently, we've pulled that right back. We've got some quotes. We're currently just doing a perspective sketch on some very basic level changes at the rear, and that should be coming to council to a PEG meeting, very shortly.
Thank you. Are there any further questions without notice?
I have two questions. First question, I believe, I'll let the relevant director jump in. So is the relevant director confident that there is enough clarity in our licensing and leasing policy to ensure that lessees can easily determine what is council's and what is the lessee's responsibility with regards to repairs and maintenance?
Thank you, Director.
Through the chair, as you're aware, we're currently reviewing our leases and licenses policy. As part of that review, it's become obvious to us that there isn't clarity in terms of across the whole board in terms of what club's responsibilities are. So we're currently reviewing that and we're bringing that back to council shortly.
Thank you.
Second question, I'm not sure I heard the directors too, so through the chair, if a lessee, this is a long question so hopefully it comes out right, if a lessee which has a board of directors has raised a concern with council staff members which potentially has OH&S implications and we've failed to act appropriately, if an incident happens which results in that board being sued, are we exposed to potential legal action as a result?
CEO? Director?
Through the chair, it depends on the situation. If council has undertaken an adequate risk assessment prior, for example, and then an incident occurs, we may not be held liable. If the board has put the issue to council's attention and council's ignored it and an issue occurs, then council has a greater sense of responsibility. So it depends on the situation and depends on council's actions prior to that event happening.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor? Further questions?
No, that's those specific questions, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor
Just a question about yellow lines, just picking up from the long answer earlier. Given that we're no longer doing refreshing yellow lines, have we done any analysis or have staff done any analysis on the cost of compliance where there aren't yellow lines or faded yellow lines versus actually putting yellow lines in? Because I'm interested in understanding how much it costs to put yellow lines in, but then how much it's costing us to have someone do the compliance work when 9 people out of 10 there I might even say 8 people out of 9 here might not have known about the rules on yellow lines. So if we don't know about it, I doubt our public will necessarily know about it.
Director?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of any analysis that's been done in that sense. It would be a good exercise to see. I'm happy to take that on board. We'll provide a memo back to council.
Thank you. Any further questions about those? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, given the extremely interesting and pertinent and at times important information raised in our questions with notice and the answers, is it the case that none of these appear in our minutes?
I'll take the question, Governance Manager. Clarify what happens to the answers to questions on those. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Lachlan. As part of the regulations, any questions without notice are not captured in the minutes unless council resolves as such.
The ones with notice.
The ones with notice are shown as with question, and we currently do not provide the response until the meeting time. The that can be, and the responses are shown. So for those with notice, we'll publish the question, and then with the minutes, you'll get the question and the answer.
That answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any further questions about this? Thank you. Section 12 is meetings of committees, regional subsidiaries and other bodies. Item 12.1, audit committee meeting minutes from 24th of April 2019. Recommendations are there for you. On page 11, somebody happy to move all those. Councillor Rick, wish to speak to them? No, thank you. Senator? Yeah. Councillor Rick, wish to speak to it? Any further debate? All those in favour? Yes, carried unanimously. Item 12.2, Eastern Waste Management Authority Board meeting minutes, recommendations on page 17. Acknowledge Rob Gregory's up back in the room there. In case there are any questions, and put a couple of items on the agenda later. So I'm happy to move that we note those minutes. Susan, note them. On page 17. There. Wish to speak to it? Do I second that? Councillor Rick, wish to speak to it? Any further debate? All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 12.3, Strategic Planning and Development Policies Committee meeting minutes, recommendations on page 23. Somebody have moved if we receive those. Councillor Backett, wish to speak to it?
I do actually. Look, again, this is one of these committee meetings that sometimes, other elected members might not be aware of. I'm certainly not aware of the extent of some of the other committee meetings. But as I was talking about in the previous motion, the Strategic Planning Development Policies Committee meeting agenda, we were presented with a report. So elected members would have had a workshop quite recently about housing diversity and then what they thought of different housing types and street trees and all those things. There was also some meetings with residents and we've also made an attempt to involve people that perhaps weren't represented in the initial consultation, including school students and maybe people in certain demographics and age groups. So one of the things that I guess alerted me, basically what the way the state apparently is looking to look at character is consistency. And I have a little bit of a problem with it. So basically what they're doing is they're looking at a whole street, both sides, and seeing what things are similar, the setbacks, the landscaping, the single driveways, all that kind of thing. But it's in a particular street. So one of the, I guess, adverse outcomes could be of this study, you could have 3 streets, one next to each other. And across that whole precinct, you could have 70% of the buildings are very similar. But in this street, anyway, I'm not a fantastic mathematician, you might find that you might only have, 50% of the street is represented, but the next street has more represented. So instead of looking at a precinct, it's actually looking at the street proper. And also what it doesn't do is look at one half of the street compared to the other half of the street. It's looking at a street in whole. So you could have one end of the street that's perfectly intact and one end of the street that's had, various developments, but it might not be maybe the outcomes that the community is looking for. So I'm just sort of alerting to you the fact that's the kind of outcomes that are coming through. I'd encourage you to have a look at the full report. And this is where I'm sort of saying different set of eyes, a heritage consultant might add some flavour to this report. So that's just my comments.
Second that. Councillor, Wayne, speak to it. Okay. Further debate? All those in favour? Yes, it's carried. Further page 12.4, Chief Executive Officer Performance Development Review Committee. The minutes recommendations on page 26. Someone happy to move that way? Someone on that committee might be. Would you speak to it?
I wasn't planning to speak to it, and I know there's times later on in the agenda just to acknowledge Kate's great work while she's been here at City of Prospect, but of course this was the mechanism that we found out about Kate resigning from City of Prospect, and I said there'll be other, sorry, I had my mouth full of food. There'll be other opportunities for us to wax lyrical about Kate's time with us and talk about her positive contributions to your prospect, but I think this is also a good opportunity in terms of those performance conversations to raise that and just to work Kate since you've been here in the City of Prospect. Just really thank you for all your hard work over the last couple of years. I was part of the engagement of Kate in the early on. I was in the interview with her, so I feel like I've been there I have been here the whole time you've been here, as have others around the table. So acknowledge that. But more specifically to the report, just commend that to you, and so it does talk about the recruitment process going forward. So that's probably an important thing for elected members to note.
Thank you. Got a second. Councillor Rick, would you speak to it?
Again, just to acknowledge Councillor Groot's comments, even in the short time I've been here, I've found Kate to be really responsive there if you ask needed assistance, and thank Kate for her leadership as well, and all the best for the future. I know we'll talk more on future items as well on that.
Thank you, Councillor Rick. Well, given the CEO that the issue of your performance has been raised, and there is a very large glass thing sitting in front of you. I was going to talk about that in the next item, which is your report, but I feel that probably now is the right juncture to do so. And Kate, as some of you may have, not all of you, was the recipient of the Local Government Professionals Association's Most Outstanding Contribution to Local Government Award very recently, the 2019 award. So, Kate, can you tell us a bit about that award, and then we'll really congratulate you for it. So, can you talk a bit about it? And is that a citation, or is that?
It is.
I think I should read the citation out in my 5 minutes speaking to this item. I think it'd be very embarrassing for you to read that. Kate, I'm recipient of the 2019 Local Government Professionals Australia South Australian Award for Outstanding Contribution to Local Government. Kate's contributions to local government are numerous and have spanned 20 years. This is Kate for 7 pages. I have been checking earlier tonight. Her experience as a planner of several councils eventually led her to the City of Playford, where she was rapidly promoted to the role of General Manager. In this role, she oversaw Playford Alive, an urban renewal and development project worth $1 billion. She then moved to the LGA, where her experience in change management, knowledge of intergovernmental issues, and understanding of practical implications of policy was greatly valued. Following this role, Kate became CEO of Wakefield Regional Council and is now the CEO of the City of Prospect. In both roles, her constant focus has been on improving service delivery and the overall quality of life for the community. Kate is a strategic and pragmatic leader who exhibits an enormous amount of energy and drive for the sector, having held volunteer positions in service of supporting professionals for decades. She's been on the board of Local Government Professionals SA for over 11 years, during which time she's played a key role in growing the women's network and both the state and rural management challenges. She's worked in the voice for country CEOs and advocated for the needs of the regions. Kate's also on the National Board of the Planning Institute of Australia, where in numerous positions she has championed South Australia's transition to a new planning regime and advocated for strong education and staff engagement. Kate is a warm, resilient and inspiring leader who is passionate about her professional development and helping people reach their full potential. This award is hereby presented to you by your peers with respect and thanks, and congratulations. You can't speak to us unless you're invited to by the way of a question. Tell us what you thought about winning the award.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mayor Lachlan. I was very humbled to receive the award last Friday. It is a relatively new award by the profession. It's been in existence for 4 years, and it is one that is dedicated to the contribution that we all make to local government, but for those members who've worked long and hard in local government in a range of areas, it is humbling to be recognised by your peers for that work. I have been a great advocate for Local Government Professionals Australia and South Australia. It is a wonderful organisation in relation to supporting people working in local government, and I've been placed to be able to assist a lot of people in councils. I'd have to say I think some of the greatest achievements through my work in local government is supporting people working in local government. I've taken great joy in mentoring younger professionals, and I'm blessed to have seen some of those professionals progress in their leadership career and know that I've had a positive contribution towards their success. So I was, as I said, I was very humbled on Friday night to be recognised. It is a wonderful way to demonstrate commitment not only to the profession but also to community. And community is always at the heart of everything that we do, and certainly well placed in my heart. A long history in working local government, and as I transition out of local government, I will hold on to that in my heart and know that my future decision making will be based around what is best for the community and the community of South Australia. So thank you very much.
That's heavy, but I'm assuming. Any further debate at this time? Councillor Barnett.
Yes. Having seen many CEOs in my 27 plus years, it struck me, and this has been echoed by members of the community that I'm in touch with, and that they were delighted that we had a CEO that actually was visible in our community and actually attended a lot of community things and spoke with members of the community, and actually even a resident in their community. And I think that really touched a lot of people. And I go back to a time when in the Australian Government Women's Association, and we had one of our workshops, and that for women. That was women working to and elected in local government, and Kate was one of our speakers. And she spoke honestly and from the heart. And I think that people really appreciate that approach and that support that is genuine and well meant. So I wish you all the best. And thank you very much for what you've contributed here to our community.
Any other debate on this item? That being the case, Councillor Group, you seem to need some.
No, I don't, but I was looking at the monument in front of Kate. I did think it was a crystal ball, and I thought it might have been a new proposition for us to work out budgets or something, so I'm glad to know exactly what it is.
I'm sure if you're introducing new material or not, but
That's right, you did.
that concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. And to note, this is not Kat's last meeting, hopefully not. She'll be here with us in June, and we'll arrange something special for that time as well. Item 13.1, report from the Chief Executive Officer, closely related to the item we just dealt with. Somebody happy to note those or move those recommendations. Councillor Group, wish to speak to them?
I think this is a great opportunity just to thank, no, I won't go through it again. No, just happy to accept the report as is. Seconder?
Deputy Mayor, I would wish to speak to it. Any other further debate? Councillor Barnett.
Quickly, I've said in our one-on-one meetings, Kate, that I've quite enjoyed reading your reports to us, and they give a very good snapshot and overview, and particularly we find out things that are of interest to us, or perhaps may delight us, and perhaps may inform us. So I thank you for those.
Further debate? In the case, we need to sum up. Conclude debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Sorry, Councillor.
I was going to do a motion without notice.
That would be good in the previous iteration of our rules, but not in these. Unless it's an urgent matter, which is right towards the end of the agenda. Yeah.
Okay.
So think about how it's urgent.
Well, kind of is.
I mean, you see, look, you need to get lead of the meeting, even have it on the floor. So yeah.
Okay. Sorry, that wasn't the advice.
Won't let us have motions without notice. I've just noticed, so yeah, we've got someone in the gallery who's put forward those items.
Yeah, so as I noted before, Rob Gregory's here from East Wales. There are a couple of items on the agenda that are related to that. Let me find the items so I'm not speaking on the 13.12, opportunities to improve waste collection. This is legally mean to pull that item forward. Item 13.12, opportunities to improve waste collection, pages 261 and 262. All those in favour of pulling forward, as against the dust pulled forward. Invite Mr. Rob Gregory to come forward and he makes their questions to before him. The item is page 261 and 262 as I've outlined. Somebody happy to move the item get on the floor. Councillor Cruz, wish to speak?
Yes, I do. So, first of all, I just want to say thank you very much to staff for this report. I thought it was actually an excellent report and went to the heart of the motion, which, as people around the table know, was my motion. And I just want to thank the Director and his staff for preparing that. I thought there's a couple of interesting things in here. One is around the economic arguments about if we were to increase our collection of recyclables and organics, and I think from what I could read from the report, the organics is a bit more economically viable than the recycling is. But I think what was more interesting, kind of buried in the paper, was the notion of us having a slightly bigger bin for some residents, a 360 litre bin for recyclables or organics, I presume, that could be collected as per normal, but provided 50% extra capacity to the household. And I think that bin could be supplied for under $50. So if I'm reading the paper right, and I'll just seeking a nod next to me to make sure I am, I was really excited about that because I thought that's actually potentially a really good outcome. And so for me, I just want to say thank you for that. So while the economics might not add up in terms of more frequent collections, it may add up in terms of providing slightly bigger bins. There was also quite a bit in the report talking about our work with East Waste and some of the development, some of the innovation that is happening. And I wonder whether, through the Mayor, whether it's possible to... Sorry, I was just going to ask whether it's possible for us to hear from the East Waste representative about what they are doing, or whether I'd have to ask a question for that to happen.
Yes, you need to ask a question.
Through the Mayor, could we find out a bit more about, from our East Waste, sorry, I didn't catch you. Rob, sorry, if we could find out from Rob a little bit more about the innovation work that's happening and the potential for us to use our RFID tags in the bins, which I think is just us in Burnside who have them, and about what that could mean in terms of looking at slightly bigger bins or different ways we can try and promote more food waste through organics and more recycling bin, and obviously take more out of the regular landfill bin. So that's a very broad question to provide any opportunity for Mr. Gregory.
Yes, you can provide an answer to the council's question, Mr. Gregory. You need to stand down.
No, that's fine. Through the Chair, thanks for the question and thanks for providing the opportunity to answer it. Broadly, East Waste have come to a point where our view is that waste education simply isn't progressing at a fast enough pace to achieve the results that we need to. Working across 7 councils, we've got 7 different dynamics that we all need to make sure that they align. So the intent of the Curbside Innovations Plan, one is to get some consistency and unity and maximise the opportunities that we have across the 7 councils. But probably more importantly, we recognise that we actually need to engage in behaviour change as opposed to education. And we're really committed now to focusing on long-term behaviour change programs rather than short, sharp education programs that really have limited value with respect to your diversion rates and so forth. If you look at your diversion rates over the last decade, I'd challenge that they haven't probably moved a great deal. Given the investment that's been put in across the sector. So ultimately we're looking at developing a holistic program, redesigning the use of the 3-bin system so that we can achieve that. We recognise it's not going to be a quick fix. You're not going to see changes in the next 6-12 months that are of great significance, but we want to work to that long-term behaviour change so that in 5-10 years we have got that real solid interaction. Certainly, changing up bin sizes and so forth is one part, one mechanism of that. The program that we're looking at, we've still got to do a lot of planning and understanding, and particularly around the economics and so forth of that, how we might deliver it. Prospect is really well placed because of the RFID. I suspect that we'll be looking at doing a number of trials and so forth. So the ability that you guys have to hone down on the data and so forth is really valuable. And that's where we see the value of the RFID is in providing information back both to council ourselves and the community around the education.
Thank you.
No further questions. Thank you for that. Look, I'm a bit excited about where this could potentially go. I note the recommendation 2 and 3 talk about having a bit more of an informal conversation with East Waste at a workshop, which I think would be fantastic, and then coming back to us with some other options around that curbside innovation later on. Also, the other thing which is interesting for me is that this is not just an economic argument. I think economics do play a role, and that was pointed out in the report. But it's also about the environmental aspects of what we're trying to do in terms of trying to keep both food and other waste out of recyclables out of landfill and into the right kind of waste streams. And so while we have an economic lens, and we have to have an economic lens over this, we also need to have an environmental lens over this as well, which I think is really important. The last point I was going to make, which has actually disappeared out of my mind, so I'll leave it and maybe cover it in something up. Just so I've introduced it before I sit down.
Over a second. Councillor Barnett.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was asking a question, but that's all right.
As a seconder, you can.
As a seconder, thank you. Yes, I read with interest the report. I was just wondering if you might care to comment where we might be going. I'm reminded of our, recent War on Waste workshop and the presenter Craig. He said he about trying to make it easy for people and to have more of a traffic light coding, red, amber, and green light, and noted that even across South Australia, across Australia, that we have all the different colour codes on our bins, and it's all confusing. So is there any idea of unification of colour coding as part of the education?
Through the chair, we would love nothing more than having uniformity of bin lists and that across all our councils as an Australian standard, which simply is waste is red, recycling is yellow, organics are green. If we could achieve that, that'd be fantastic. Reality is, from an economics perspective, it doesn't stack up to go around and change bin lids individually, so you'll need to wait for a swag of when you do a whole scale replacement for a lot of councils. That will hopefully be in the next 2 to 4 years, depending on the integrity of their bin system, and that'll be the opportune time to do it. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further, Councillor? Second, is there any further debate for this item? Councillor Rick.
Question, Rob, is there any, way in the future of changing the word organics and linking it to simple just food or food scraps? Because I guess the feel I have is a lot of people in the community I've spoken to on this topic do not understand. They don't link food or food scraps to organics. I guess there's a mixture of the term organic could be loosely used in the community of organic food. A lot of people don't see is basic food, basic food scraps. They don't link it to the word organics and the green bin, and that's, I guess, a real problem. I don't know if you want to talk on that at all, but particularly that waste one, we're saying if they could just get people to put the food in the green bin, it'll fix half the problem of the waste industry faces. So I think there's a real linkage problem there.
Very quickly through the chair, absolutely. That's one of the things that we want to look at is the language that we use. We get caught up, we even talk about Murph and FOGO and all those things that we get excited about, which people get completely lost on. So absolutely the conversation and language that we use will be central to this. If I don't get another chance to talk, I just want to say I'm really encouraged and excited about the opportunity that Prospect is in having the conversation and debate. I think that you're halfway there in terms of seeking different alternatives and so forth, and we're really pleased to work with Simon and Pam to develop this up. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further, Councillor Rick? Any further debate? Councillor Gruden, so you need to sum up?
Yes, I do. I did remember, yes. So the point I was going to make, which I referred to in my opening comments, was around education, and I think that's a really key point. And most people around the room have probably seen the new TV ads that have come out, and they're annoying enough to kind of take notice of them. I find them very annoying, but I also find them very effective because they're annoying. And so I think that for us, because particularly in the report, it talks about the eastern states, some of the eastern state councils who do weekly collections, but their diversion rates have actually changed over the last couple of years. And so, and I know that this council has struggled for many years about how you get that message out there. And there were previous councils, and we had some doozy debates about how we do that best with communities. So I think for us, we need to absolutely focus on that going forward in terms of how we can nudge people's behaviour, how we can make it clear that organics means food, and it means a whole lot of other things that aren't food as well, and how we kind of get that message out. It's really important. I commend the motion, and I commend Big Bins to you as well. I look forward to them.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Yes, it's carried. So thank you, Mr. Frederick, for your attendance. We'll now return to item 13.2. Financial hardship policy. We have to move the recommendation on page 38. Deputy Mayor, we should speak to it.
I was interested to read that we, this one, page 4. That we currently don't have a financial hardship policy, so I think it's a really good move to get this in place, and interested to hear what the other active members have to say around the draft policy.
Thank you. Got a second. Mr. Bruce.
Yeah, look, I commend Deputy Mayor and his comments. We haven't got one, and we should have one, and it's good that we have one in front of us. I think it's appropriate in terms of the way it deals with people who are dealing with financial hardship. The only two comments I'd make, we use the term hardship debtor as meaning somebody who is having some financial issues. I just find that a really unfortunate term. Might have its basis in some sort of legal or administrative requirements, but I just think if I was coming to council and I was referred to as a hardship debtor, I would find that's a very difficult language, and so I don't have a solution to how we can refer that, how we can change that terminology. But I'm a bit stuck here because we're going to approve the policy as is tonight, which means we're approving the term hardship debtor. I might just make the point if we could even, I can't now because I've seconded it, but if there's an amendment to say that the policies as presented in attachment 1 to 8 with any minor amendments that could perhaps form a minor amendment, just finding some language that's a bit more inclusive and a bit more, I guess, a little bit softer for someone. I just find that would be a useful thing to do. The only other comment I'd make is just a presentation on, can we please try and use the same font in each paragraph in the policy? There are font changes both in terms of size and type all through it. It just kind of, it just annoys me a little. Just in terms of when it goes up as a final document, it's just nice to have it presented in that way. But I think content-wise, really good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further debate?
Yeah, I was actually too, along with the mover and seconder, I'm shocked to realise that we didn't actually have a financial hardship policy. So it is good as well. We do have one to address this. I would like to help, but I'm not sure how we could move that amendment but I do agree that the word hardship debtor, it needs to be a bit tidier in that regard. But I don't really have a set solution of what the term could be used. So that was actually more a question of administration, I suppose. Is there a term that we could use to ease that wouldn't dramatically alter the policy? Administration.
Through the chair, I do not believe that term will actually alter the needs of the policy. May I add that although we never had a hardship policy, that has always been part of the NOB. So the process of approving hardship and a basic payment by installment due to hardship has always been in our annual business plan from when it first started. So
before you continue, see, is there an alternate term that you could think of to hardship ever.
Person suffering financial.
Okay, if there's not, then that's the
Yes,
case.
not at the moment. Perhaps it was suggested that maybe an eligible debtor policy, but I do not have one that immediately.
So, and in the absence of that, just from the chair, pick up the previous speaker's comment that the words with minor amendments could be added to part 2, which would allow the staff to go from 1 to 2.
Oh, so if you add with, sorry, I misheard what you were saying. Okay, well, look, I'll foreshadow an amendment to add with minor amendments to address.
You better if you move rather than foreshadow it.
Oh, I'll move it. Yeah, move the amendment, sorry.
Okay. Just let them get that.
Okay, so I missed that. Bridge speaking then.
Just speaking further to it while they're just getting up.
No, that's fine.
Someone's already in a difficult position and they read how they're being.
Just whatever we change, we've got to make sure whatever we change, it's got to flow in the whole document.
That's just a lot of money.
No, I'm not going to see weeks.
In their communications, perhaps they can still keep it as a debtor policy. In their communication, it could be, you know, payment alternatives to get the money.
New Zealand.
Yeah. Person, yeah, exactly.
Sort of thought about it.
No.
That's what it is.
Would have been sent them in the morning, so you have a full day to get over it. I get home on Thursday. So,
Yeah.
so,
Does it cover businesses as well, or is it just individuals? So
that's all true.
yeah, so you better be careful about that.
Okay, I just now seek, so let's pull us back together, Councillor, sorry about that. Just seek the concurrence of the mover, Deputy Mayor, are you happy with that addition?
Yes.
Incorporate.
Yes.
Yeah. Second, Brick, happy with that? And incorporate, second, else, the need to incorporate a change, all those in favour? Yes, it does incorporate it, thank you. Councillor, you're finished with your, yes, thank you. Any further debate on the side? Councillor Lowe, would you sum up?
It's a really good point that was raised by former Deputy Mayor, Councillor Greg. And part of the, I'd also like to acknowledge the point that Director of Corporate Services made regarding the fact that we have had provisions in our annual business plan, but I like the fact that we've taken this to a policy. It'll help us apply this consistently, and I think that's really important. The assessment criteria is reasonable and it's well thought through. It covers a lot of instances and I'm comfortable with the assessment criteria. But the key to the effectiveness of this is in the delivery and the messaging around the fact that people are in genuine difficulty at times in their life and they not always are and won't always will be, and if we can provide them with assistance and help them through that time in a way that demonstrates that we care about their situation, and some of that is the language that we're using in the process as well, will be important, then I think we're doing something that we can to help people out, and that's part of our responsibility is the level of government that is kind of the guardianship of the community. So I think it's a really good positive step, and I commend the motion.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Yes, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 30.3, revised corporate risk management policy and framework, recommendation on page 49. We have to move that way. Councillor Backer, wish to speak to it?
And it is a good report, and I think it's really important that, I'm sorry, I should be standing. I should be standing. My apologies. Yeah, it's a good report, and I think sometimes it's not, entertaining or sexy, that it's really important that a lot of our things tie in to where we're going. And you've got to remember, risk is not about eliminating risk, it's actually about managing it. And I think as elected members, we're always sometimes on that edge. If you are totally risk averse, you do nothing. But I think we have to manage the risk so we can actually achieve some good outcomes for the community. So I think this gives a bit of a roadmap for us to carry out that work effectively. So congratulations on the report.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks, would you speak to it? Any further debate? Further debate, all those in favour? Yes, it's carried unanimously. 13.3, revised corporate, sorry, we've just done.
So that one.
The item 13.4, the small street activation policy, recommendations on 58.9, somebody to move that way. Deputy Mayor, would you speak to it?
Okay, so I'm really glad to see this has come back to us so quickly, and there's a few other aspects of the report I'm happy to see. I'm happy that we've taken a leaf out of other councils' books. I know that Councillor Backer is a staunch fan of seeing what others have done before us and adopting their good ideas and improving them ourselves and then handing them on to someone else for the same purpose. So I think that's how we should be working in this space. Also acknowledge that the resident who brought this to my attention has done a lot of good work as well. It really helped us create a blueprint so that we've got a few, I was going to say free kicks, but we've got a bit of a head start there by taking on board suggestions from the community and also from other local government entities who've made some headway here. I'm also happy to see that we're tying this in with the funding that's been proposed for the next budget in relation to Davenport Terrace. And I'm happy about a lot of things about this motion. I'm also happy to see that we haven't rushed in and pegged or earmarked a whole bunch of money very quickly to try to move something along rapidly because things need to take their turn in our business, and I think it's entirely reasonable that we'll work through this process. We give it a bit of time to percolate and see what we come up with, get the community's feedback on what we're considering and continue to embellish and enhance the idea, and then we'll be in a really good position in the future to not only apply this thinking hopefully in a pilot run in Allen Street and then in other streets along the stretch between Davenport and Churchill Road, but also through other parts of our city as well. And there's no reason why a similar methodology and approach and mindset can't be applied systematically throughout our city where it's going to give us the most benefit. We don't know what this is going to look like. We've seen some diagrams and some images of what it may look like, but if it does look anything like that, I think I'd be really happy with that as well because it responds to greening our streets, which is fantastic. It also responds to activating our community and giving people an environment where they feel compelled or likely to come out of the house and create communities where there currently aren't much of a community. And so if we can help foster and grow that element of where we live, then we're helping that process and doing a good job and giving people, empowering people to contribute to it themselves. So there's a lot to like about this, so thanks to the team who put together the report, and thanks to Councillor Barnett for her support through the process as well, and look forward to hearing other people's thoughts around the table.
Seconded, Councillor Barnett.
Yes, again, another happy little Vegemite here. So thanks to all involved in getting us to this stage. I think that this is a great opportunity for us to get back to more grassroots activation. We've got residents who are interested, who do have some issues. I think this can be, we're looking, I guess, of applying it more to where our urban corridor zone is with the increase in apartment building all around that particular area. But we could also, apart from that, be applying it, I guess, to some other small streets, that are undergoing perhaps some big changes in whatever way. So this has really come about from the group of residents in Allen Street who live in apartments and who have noticed some quite a lot of changes in their street. It's a whole street basically that is now left with very few, I'm trying to count now, but there will most probably be no houses, single detached houses left there in the next few years. So it'll be all apartments. The other thing is that they love having our George Woodall Reserve and all the other. Part of the concern is about the increased visitation that will be happening there. Lovely to, they're really pleased about, it'll be a wonderful community asset. But with increased visitation there, they're already saying, like when things have been happening there before about the lack of car parking, you can go down that street. We've been down there a few times, and you cannot actually park. You cannot park. I'm trying to go down there a few times. You cannot find a park. I mean, I don't mind walking a bit from around the corner, but it's all about the change that has happened in just that street in such a short time. So I'm really pleased that we're working through this and together and looking at more of a grassroots activation of our community, and that we're perhaps not just looking at it as like an engineering problem or a traffic problem or that, but looking at it in the totality of a small street. So I commend this to you, and I'm sure other elected members about, I think perhaps in their ward where this might be in the future about to be applied.
Thank you. Further debate, Councillor Tobacco.
Yeah, I concur with the previous speakers. It is an excellent proposal, and it's nice to see sort of that innovation coming into some changing faces of our streets. What I do, and the report was quite specific about it, it is a former employee who lives on the street. So we've just passed a risk management policy. So I just want to be really clear when it comes back to us as equity across the city, that it might be a very worthy winner of like a precinct grant, but it might have to be pitched against other precincts. So there is a fairness and clarity and transparency for decision making. But in principle, I think it's a fantastic concept, and often the best ideas do come from our residents and community groups. So commend the motion.
Thank you. Further debate?
I look forward to seeing Allen Street getting this makeover, and I hope that we can roll this out to other streets, particularly in Northwood, where some of the streets are quite neglected, run down. So looking forward to seeing this tomorrow.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Lowood, do you need to sum up?
No, I don't.
Okay, conclude debate. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 13.5, Council Member Communications Protocol, recommendation on page 16.8. I'd be happy to move it to its current form. So, Annette.
Yes, as one who's prone to a lot of communication, we have had started a workshop, and so I think the recommendations that come as a result of that. So I think we all seem to be, in tune from the workshop, and so I commend the communication, council members' communication protocol to members.
Have a second. Councillor Pearce, would you speak to it?
No, thanks.
Further debate? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah.
Outrate me.
I'm still thinking what you say.
Councillor Bruce.
All too polite. Thank you, Mayor. Look, I've got a couple of concerns about the protocol, and my overall comment would be I think it's locking us up unnecessarily for the way that I've certainly experienced an elected member, a staff administration relationship in the past, and I understand without going through the reason why we got to this point, but I'm not sure that this reflects either maybe my intent of it or the conversation we've had in the workshop. So we had the conversation in the workshop, and then this has just come to us. I don't, and I may have missed a workshop, I don't think this has come back to us as a draft for us to consider outside of this meeting. So am I right in saying that? Yeah, okay. Just first comment is the actual first page of the protocol says draft for comment. I'm presuming that isn't coming for us to comment. I presume it's coming to us for approval. So just to point that out. So a couple of things. First of all, under definitions, point 2 on page 73 of the agenda, it talks about strategic operational influence and mode. And I'm just wondering whether those definitions have come from the Act or where we've actually come up with those definitions from.
Question.
That is my question. Do those definitions relate back to the Act, or do they not?
Answer that question. Pointing this way somewhere, Director.
They are definitions not from the Act. They are definitions through just the definition that we have.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So I think there are references to the Act back throughout the document. So I guess for me it's just a bit about consistency, whether we go back to the Act for everything or whether we're not. That's a comment. Section 4, legislative corporate requirements on page 74. It talks here about, doesn't restrict council members from exercising our rights as a citizen to use the FOI application process to get information. I just think that's really disappointing we've got that in there, because I would hate to think it ever gets to the point where I want something that badly I've got to go through an FOI process to get it. So I'm not sure about that. Section 4.1.4, council members does not in any way seek to influence council employee recommendations or decisions. Now, I'm trying to understand what that actually means. So if that means when we're debating issues on the floor, as we have tonight, we've made a number of amendments and we might make more later on, I'm trying to work out the relationship between this comment and us actually challenging some of the comments that we get in council report. So maybe if I could just ask that as a question, does 4.1.4 apply to papers being debated on the floor of council in council meetings?
Through the Chair, 2.14 actually refers directly to the Code of Conduct.
4.1.4. Not 2.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said 2. Okay.
Actually refers to the 2.14 Code of Conduct policy. It actually says refrain from directing or influencing council staff respect to the way in which these employees perform the duty. It is a direct quotation from the policy.
Just confirm if the words in any way are also part of the code.
No, in any way it's not part of the code.
So I'm sorry, Director, I'm still a bit unclear still. So earlier this evening I raised a question about yellow lines and compliance activity, and the Director to my right agreed to take that on notice and provide information back in the memo. Could that have been seen to influence his recommendations or decisions as part of that? I guess I'm not sure, and I'm not trying to be smart on this, but I'm trying to understand to what extent will this lock us up in actually not pushing back, but actually having a robust debate about recommendations that council staff might put up that as an elected member group we may not agree to. If I read that in its pure form, it suggests that I can't do that. I just want some clarity as to whether I can or I can't, either in a formal council meeting such as tonight or in a workshop where a director might say A and we say no, it's B. Kind of who's the ultimate authority in that case?
Okay, I'll take that as a question. Do you want me to do? Director or somebody?
The request for further information for yellow line is a request from council. That will be a request for us to go through and provide a response to council. So that is a request. In terms of influencing, so that is influencing council staff. So that in terms of that, what we have, when the policy is to influence council staff actually change a recommendation before it gets to the council proper for debate or discussion on the floor.
Councillor? Any further, Councillor?
Yep, lots more. Okay, I'm not convinced that doesn't still lock us up. So I'm thinking of, let's just say, for example, the naming of our new facility. I think we've had a report come to council several times with a recommendation. We've we've made other suggestions in workshops as well. And so for me, that's influencing the report because we're directing it, but whether it's an influence or not. Anyway, I'll just leave that as it is, but I'm just not clear about that at this point. Application policy 5.1 on page 74 as well down the bottom. It talks about all requests for information or actions shall be directed to the Office of the Chief Executive in the first instance, unless another officer remote. But I presume that still allows us to go to directors if it's an issue with yellow lines or it's a planning issue. That would still allow us to go. I'm seeing nods, so I won't answer this question, but I presume it does. Section 7.4 on page 75 down the bottom, Mayor and Council members, Chief Executive Officer and Directors. So this is about meetings and briefings. It says here on an as-needs basis to brief on strategic projects and project delivery events and major council activities. So in my time here, I'm starting to feel like one of those people that keep saying in the years that I've been here, but I've had, I think, really good relationships with two CEOs that I've worked with in my role as a councillor, Kate and Mark Goldstone beforehand. I think part of that was premised on the fact that we would have regular catch-ups to not necessarily get a briefing or a project delivery or an event or a major council activity. It was actually just to say, hey, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I want to do. Like, it was a general, it's kind of a catch-up. Something I might have with a staff member that works for me or a colleague that I work with. And I feel that this kind of, again, locks us up that unless it's one of those things, because it doesn't actually even give an out to say, or any other issue, it just says these things, and that just worries me. Request for information 8.2 on the top of page 76.
You probably have about a minute left. I've extended your time because you've had lots of answers.
Okay, I'll wrap up in a minute. Again, I just feel it locks us up. So it says that we'll get information back in 2 business days and memo within 72 hours. I just think there are times where staff aren't going to be able to get back to us in 2 days or 72 hours with a memo. I just think the more we have in a policy or a guideline, there's compliance that will sit behind that, and then we'll start getting grumpy if we don't get the memo in 2 days, where there might be a very good reason why that can't happen. And so I feel that's locking staff up a bit unnecessarily. And the last comment I'll make, again, is under 10 governance. Council members may make the following inquiries, page 77, to the Manager of Governance and Administration. It gives us 3 things we can talk to the Manager of Governance and Administration on. It kind of locks us up with what if there are other issues we want to talk to the Governance Manager on. So I just feel, as a bit of a theme, it locks us up as we go through about what we can do, who we can talk to, how we can talk to them, and what we can talk to them about, and that just worries me a little bit. I don't feel comfortable in supporting this tonight. I won't be supporting it. I think this just needs, and I know we've had one conversation, as I'm aware. It needs more of a conversation. I'm just not comfortable with it as it is, so I won't be supporting it.
Thank you. And I now regret my decision to allow that councillor Green to go ahead of me, because he's not only covered a whole bunch of points that I was going to cover, but a whole bunch that I didn't think of. So a lot of my sentiments have been covered by Councillor Green. I just want to make a couple of additional points. Where are we here? So yeah, 7.4, by being specific about what we could on an as-needs basis ask for a briefing on. We've had this conversation before about what's a strategic project and what's just a common sense thing or an operational thing. And I don't know whether it's as clear as that. And, you know, the process around determining whether something which I might want to discuss on an as-needs basis needs to meet some sort of points criteria to determine whether it's strategic level or not. I think that it had a significant amount of issues with this kind of thing, and particularly recently I could see a need to be quite heavy-handed about it, but I have not been on council as long as some of my other elected members. But recently I can't recall us having the types of issues which mean that we need to lock down things to this extent, and I'll give you another example of what I mean by that. Okay, so 9.3, council members must refrain from exerting undue pressure on employees regarding specific requests, etc., etc. And this makes it sound like a bunch of rabble who are constantly being accused of harassing staff members 24 hours a day for answers on things. Maybe I might ask a question to maybe directed at the CEO. Can we have some sort of indication on the number of times where staff members have reported that they've felt harassed to this level by elected members, so that we need to have this heavy-handed approach? That was a question.
CEO.
Thank you very much for the question, Councillor Larwood. We haven't a record within the organisation about staff suggesting that they've been under undue pressure. The guidance that we've had in relation to preparing this has been such that we just wanted to make it clear that some staff whilst they might have reported it, can feel under pressure, and we need to respect the staff at times could be contacted and feels that they're in a situation where they must actually undertake a function or a role. Now, that's not to say that it has actually happened within the City of Prospect, but I do know that when staff have previously been approached by some councillors, they will think that the council is actually giving them a direction. It's a matter of a functionality issue of a staff member undertaking their role, and a councillor might approach them and ask them to do something, and they'll feel as if they're obliged to do it. And I'm not suggesting that it has necessarily happened regularly within the City of Prospect, but there have been examples across the sector where staff feel that way, and so the clause was a bit of a catch-all clause in respect to recognising that the staff would feel that way.
I appreciate the point, but I think you've answered my question in the sense that we don't operate like that here. Until such a point in time at which there's an issue, I think we're being a bit of a preemptive strike here. The last point that I was going to make was, 8.4, where the information being sought is not in the form of existing council documents, etc., etc., the councilman will be encouraged to bring forward business by way of a motion notice. So I can foresee a day when we've got 5, 10, 15, 20 motions on notice, and we'll be here until 2 o'clock in the morning dealing with issues which could have easily been resolved in a way that, from my perspective, they've been resolved generally satisfactorily over the last 5 years in my experience. I think that there's been a lot of frustration in the last, say, 6 months or so when we've been here till 10 or 11 or 11:30 at night, and as a result of needing to wrap things up, we rush decisions and people get upset about things, and human around the table wants that environment. So I can see that this directive is going to lead to that situation being more and more relevant, and I don't think that's the way. That's not the way I want to do it. I want to speak on everybody else's behalf. So I also won't be supporting the motion as it currently is.
Further debate?
Ate some peanuts, sorry. I think it's really important that we have one. I know my term in council, the clarity is not there. I've got this issue, I send it to admin, I don't hear back. Who do I send it to now? Do I send it to the CEO? Do I send it to the mayor? Oh, if I send it that way, then I get a quicker response. So there has to be clarity on for elected members and staff with communication. And I don't mind ticking a box, this here and this here and this here, that's fine. But I concur with Deputy Councillor Groot in the fact that we are politicians at the end of the day. We're here to get a result for our community, and we will ask information, and we just need to know the most effective process to do that. And if you're telling us the most effective way to do that is through a motion of notice, then great. But this shouldn't be above and beyond what's in a code of conduct and workplace law and all that kind of stuff. I don't think we should have all kind of things we're tying ourselves into knots in. And I think I won't be supporting it in its current form. I think it needs to come back at a workshop, and also some examples. So, this is a typical example, this is da-da-da-da, and this is the kind of example response you should expect. And I think that works both ways. So I'm supportive of having a policy, just not this one. Protocol, sorry.
Further debate? Sorry, Councillor Ritter, you are.
Yeah, I was going to say the point on clarity as well, and there were times where I tried to say the admin email. What I felt is, and I felt I wasn't getting as timely response, and I've sent emails now. What I'll tend to do is send an email to say Kate and include the admin email, or it'll be the director and include the admin email, and I get a far quicker response from doing that. But I think it does need to be embedded in the protocol about what will be the quickest way. So it could be, for example, like you set up and say an IMC email, like Office of the sort of Mayor and Chief Executive, and that's one email where all the council inquiries go, and then the directors just grab it and filter it themselves. That could be one option. One option could be that you send it to the director and include the admin email, but I would like a clear protocol embedded in this, so there is one email, or that could be one idea, one email that every councillor inquiry goes to, so we don't have to pick and choose what director we send it. Do we include admin? Do we do this? And because I just think there's so many different ways, and I look at it. Sometimes I'll be sitting up late at night, I'll be thinking, okay, so I've got this inquiry, but what's going to be the most effective email to send it to? And admin on its own is not going to get. I've found it's not going to get me the quickest response. So I just think clear guideline for communication needs to be embedded in this protocol.
Thank you. From the chair, I concur with most of what's been said, but I'm really interested in this idea that it needs to be improved, and I'm happy to take it in parts tonight. So there's been a lot of hard work done by staff, which we should acknowledge. But if we don't want to vote this one up, then you shouldn't abandon the report. But I'm quite attracted to this idea that there could be a service standard approach to communication protocol in that staff could advise an intended response time to our queries. So that could be quite nice. Because at the moment, this is imposing upon us what our constraints are, but not actually indicating what the service standards are in terms of how quickly we should be written back to. And it might be nice for us to know that you're not going to get a response in an hour, but the staff could say we intend to get back to you within 24 hours, or if it's a detailed query within a week or something. That's not in together. That could be an interesting addition. But I've had a couple of chances to have a look at this and provide us some feedback, and some's been picked up and some hasn't. But one of my suggestions was that the legal advice we received with regard to the Code of Conduct inquiry, which incidentally cost us 5 times the cost of any previous Code of Conduct inquiry, so I don't want to throw that legal advice out the window. I mean, it was, we paid for it. That this issue of the CEO delegating the ability for us to talk to individual staff needs to be cleared up, so none of us can be accused of going beyond that. And I would have thought a table might be a quick way to show where we can send something if the CEO's delegated authority for IT issues to go to that person, or delegated authority for request of service to go to admin, or queries about policy to go to directors. And I would have thought a table would make it pretty easy. And the table would pick up the escalation. If that take a response from there, who's the next step? And is it the CEO that's second, or the CEO one third, there's something in between. But I think it could be done pretty easily. It doesn't appear to be like a structure as much as almost a flowchart of how you deal with some of the communications things in here. But I do agree with some of the comments that it looks a lot more rigid and constraining than what I think the intent is. What we need is to have a facilitative document rather than a constraining document. And what we need is to make sure that if there's another Code of Conduct inquiry against any of us, you or me or whatever, that we can point to this saying, well, we're really complying with this document. Thanks to the Act and thanks to the Code, but they aren't restrictive documents. They are facilitative acts and facilitative code with some constraints. And we've gone above and beyond that. Here's what we're following. So I think having a document is important, but it doesn't, to me, pick up the flavour of the workshop, which was stated pretty clearly that all of you enjoy the relationship you've had with staff over time, occasionally one-on-one, occasionally with a director or whatever, occasionally informal, phone, email, and that's really smoothed the waters for our community. Picked up in the report over this proposed protocol, but it's not embedded in the protocol. For some reason, it's just not picked up, and I think that's a disappointing part about it. And I don't think it's hard to fix it. I've got other comments about the mirror role. Again, I think it puts a bit of a straitjacket around the role. It really just should be a facilitative document that provides opportunity. And I've also said to the CEO, the delegations are always at the discretion of the CEO, and that's very clear in the Act. And this communications protocol needs to make it clear that the CEO, whoever it might be, needs to be able to withdraw the delegations at their discretion at any time. Maybe to protect staff, maybe because someone's left, maybe because there's a lack of clarity. But that should remain firmly in the grip of the CEO at any particular time. And that is in there, but it can be spelled out a bit better, I think. So there's some good suggestions from tonight. I think it's a work in progress, so certainly I need to vote by the look of it. But, I can't support its current form, but I do agree that it can and should be a very useful document for all of us. Any further debate? Councillor Barnett, you should sum up.
Yes. given the discussion, can I ask the presiding officer if he's prepared to take them separate, the two parts separately?
Yes, indicated so already.
Right, because I feel that may be a solution in that, you know, if number one gets supported, then we're just receiving and noting the report, and then that leaves it open for it to come back, and I believe, to another workshop, and we can tidy it up. Because at the end of the day, we do have to get something that we're all comfortable with, will understand, and I also note that normally, I think this might be the first time we've had a protocol rather than a policy, and I'm just wondering whether it's more of a procedural procedure, showing us the way rather than anything else. But without, I haven't looked up my dictionary protocol, so that could well be the appropriate terminology. So I do think that part of all this sort of hasn't been mentioned so much is our issue about capturing communications in council's records. And I can remember that some of all this came about because, you know, we weren't quite sure whether we were supposed to be doing, sending everything that we send off to the, what's it, council member, council something or other, whatever it is, where it gets all captured, and so where our backsides are basically protected in case of any down the track somebody wants to sue me for saying or doing something or whatever. We've got the record captured there. So I think some of that should be in our thinking, all right? And also I think the idea of having a bit more of a, you know, like if if something or other happens and you do, you know, A, B, you know, and then you've got a clear step process. If yes, da-da-da-da, if no, da-da-da-da-da, or something. So I think that notion might make it a bit clearer to people, a bit less like words and a bit more diagrammatic picking up from some of the things. So I think it's, yeah, good idea. We're clarifying even tonight as we go, all right? And so I think it has to be clear to us, it has to be clear to the staff, and also it has to be clear to a member of the community out there what is the process, you know, what do they, I mean, quite often a community member will expect us to wave the magic wand, that I wish I had many magic wands, and then it'd be fixed up like that. So we may understand some of that process, but so I think it's making it as crystal clear as we can, crystal ball clear as we can, to particularly those three sectors involved.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. So taken in parts. All those in favour of part one? Against? Carried unanimously. All those in favour of part two? All those against part two? It's lost unanimously. Okay. They'll come back to us. Item 13.6, introducing public question time, recommendation on page 7980. Councillor Rick, happy to move it?
Yes, please.
Speak to it.
Yes. Look, thank you to the staff for the comprehensive report that's come back. I was actually really quite impressed with the report, and also happy with the proposed draft guidelines as well. Originally I brought this is obviously a report stemmed from a motion I brought forward a number of months ago to look at introducing public question time on the agenda of ordinary council meetings. I was really impressed coming to Prospect about the, I guess, inclusiveness of the community to have a say in council meetings, both by recording the meetings and making those available for people to view them as well. So, and also the ease to get a deputation as well. I thought this would actually, considering a couple of councils do also have the ability for people to ask or members of the public to ask questions at council meetings. I thought that could be another way for us to be inclusive and approachable for the community, or another way to engage them in our meetings as well and give them a platform to ask questions. It's been interesting that having served on another council and asked some questions since this report's come out, and some people have just been hesitant about even recording meetings because they say, oh, well, we don't want something recorded in case we get sued. My attitude is you don't say anything stupid that's going to get you sued. Pretty simple. Or if you're concerned about someone coming to ask questions that could say harm staff or harm councillors, okay, quite simple. Here are a set of guidelines that are very clear on what will be accepted as a question from the public, and the Mayor will chair that accordingly as part of chairing of the meeting. And if the question is going to be, or if it's obvious that the person, an individual has come to say defame a council member or defame a staff member, their question won't be heard. So there are options for us to set guidelines in place, and I'm quite happy with these guidelines. I was quite happy with the report. I'm quite happy it's a trial as well, and you know, like anything, we give it a go, see if it works. If it doesn't for us, then we don't have to. We won't continue with it in the long term. But I'd like to sort of see if this does engage the community to come. I'd also like to see potential, if possible, council promote that, you know, through social media, you know, as another way to engage our community, that they can come and ask questions without notice at public meetings, and see how that goes. And welcome to the debate.
Thank you. Can we second it? Councillor De Backer, would you speak?
Look, I just congratulate Councillor Ritt for bringing it up. I think our community and our decision-making process. One thing I didn't notice is there an age restriction on it? Because I'd love to see some of our students coming up and asking questions. So I think it's a really good way to engage the community in asking questions. And again, there's responsibility around it, and I think that has to be made really clear to the people participating, as it is to the people around this table. So I'd love to see the results of the trial, and I'd welcome the community to participate.
I'm going to support this. I'm not a massive fan of it for a few reasons. I can see a lot of questions being asked, and invariably a lot of the responses will be, well, I haven't got an answer, I'll take that on notice, and those types of things like that. So I'm not sure how useful it's going to be, but I will vote in favour of it, and I'm interested to see what I think in 6 months' time, because that's the purpose of having a trial. So happy to go along with it.
Further debate?
Just very briefly again, thank you, Councillor Ripp. I think this is a fantastic idea. I'm actually quite excited about what it could become. There were just two things in the draft guidelines I was a little concerned about, which I think we've picked up in the 6 month trial. The first one is maximum time of 3 minutes. Like I don't think everyone can talk for 15, quite frankly. I think if people want to engage that way, I'm quite happy to entertain it as elected members, but we'll see how that goes. We'll see what sort of interest there will be. But I just think if we're engaging local members to come and talk to us, you know, as long if we say 15 minutes for the whole thing, I don't care if it's one person 15 minutes. The other one now, I'm sitting on the fence a bit with this. Is the section 4.4C, questions and comments of council staff or councillors. So you don't want someone to come in and have a free kick at any of us or any staff for that, but more importantly for staff. But I think if someone comes in and wants to kind of have a proper constructive conversation about whether they're aggrieved about something that's relevant and they meet all the other guidelines, I'm happy to take someone saying, Mark, you said you're going to do that and you didn't. I don't have a problem with that. I'd probably be a bit more protective about staff. I think, you know, I think Councillor De Backer mentioned before, we are politicians, we're in public eye, and we're accountable publicly. So if we not adhere to what we're meant to be doing, then I'm okay to hear it in a public forum. I might not like what I'm hearing, but I think a resident would have the right to say it. I'm happy to leave it in for now, but I think in the 6 month review, it'd just be interesting to see whether that actually was an issue or not. But congratulations, Councillor Ripp. I think this is fantastic.
Ask a question. Is it resident or ratepayer that is excluded? Is it just people allowed to ask questions? Could be anyone, but it just specifically talks about residents.
Where are you referring to, Councillor?
Sorry, I've lost my page.
Page 87 as well.
Page 87.
You can answer it.
I'm looking at page 87, item 1, it says members of the public to ask questions.
Okay, my apologies.
So,
No, I just picked it up somewhere else. My apologies.
anybody, any member of the public is
Okay.
intention of that.
All right, good.
Any further debate?
Just a question. Are we allowing questions with notice and go? My personal opinion is we should accept questions with notice.
Just let me ask the question first. It was discussed in the report, just clarify which we will allow, so it was both.
Through the chair, I think the report indicates that members of the public that walked in through the chairs. I think the report refers to members of the public that actually walked in through the meeting itself and asked without notice.
So you can just clarify if they provided notice, we still accept that, but we'll also don't accept them coming as a walk up without notice.
That's correct. That's correct.
Just in front of me. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, so my question following up from that is so that it's only questions with notice like we do on our agenda that will be recorded in our minutes. So the only record that any member of the public will have if it's from the floor and they come up and ask a question and even if the answer is to be, they will be taken on notice and sent back to you or something or other. Yeah, I'm just thinking that so our recordings only last for a few months, don't they? No?
The answer is infinity.
Infinity, yeah.
Ah, all right then. I thought there was a specific.
You can.
I think the general answer is we don't have the mechanism to take them off YouTube. So.
All right then. All right. So that could be one explanation that was about them, even though they're not reflected in our minutes. Yes. All right.
Further debate? Back to you, Councillor Ripp. You need to sum up.
Yeah, just a couple of points. Thanks everyone for the comments that really got me thinking even now. So thank you so much. And particularly, I feel with the without notice that comment that was made. Well, we have a questions without notice section in our report, and I feel that the staff are generally able to answer most of our general questions. They might take a few points away and then come back to us with the memo. But if a resident comes and they do ask a question, and it gives the staff the opportunity to go back direct to the resident as well at a later date. I would hope that, and in general the staff are across their brief overall, and I would hope most general questions could be answered on the night. To address point C, questions of competency, or 4C, questions of competency of council staff or councillors, I think I was reading into that, like if they come in here in sort of a defamatory way to defame. But absolutely, our roles are political in nature, and we've got to be willing to accept feedback, both positive and negative feedback. And yeah, I'll get plenty of negative feedback as a football umpire, I won't go there. What I'm told behind the goals. Yeah, if you go and umpire a Port Adelaide match, like I used to umpire in the SNFL, the ball will go through the middle of the behind area, but somehow you're wrong, it should have been a goal, so that was always fun. But no, we accept that feedback, both positive, negative, and we should embrace it, and if we're not willing to embrace it, then what are we doing in our roles, in my opinion? So yeah, I really hope that we can embrace this and make it go forward, and I think one council comment too, we can, if without the age restriction as well, we can have even students coming in raising questions. We could have and engage people, young people in the political process as well, potentially. So thank you.
All those in favour? Against? Is carried unanimous. Just letting you know, I'm going to call it adjournment at 9:30. 9:30ish. We've got a lot more to go, and the 5-minute break will be good for some of us. Next item is item 13.7, feedback on local government reform ideas. The recommendations on page 89. I'm happy to move as it is in the papers.
So moved.
Speak to it, Councillor Brick. Seconder. Deputy Mayor, you should speak to it. Further debate?
Yes, I think I'm fairly reasonably okay with what will be our responses going forward. But I would like to bring up one which maybe it has been topical given we've had our own council elections and now we've had the latest recent federal election, and that there's something in there about possibly about banning election posters like call flus. And I just bring it up because I had a little bit more research about it, and in the advertiser on April the 18th, 2019, both the retired Adelaide MPs, Kate Ellis and Christopher Pyne, noticed, spoke about it's time to ban election posters, and quote, election posters should be banned in campaigns to stop annoying voters, wasting resources and distracting from the real issues, according to Kate Ellis. And I noted on advertised Facebook posts, and I think they're about close to 400, and by my estimation, about 98% were all in favour of, at least having the discussion about banning like call flus. And most of those were around environmental issues, about an equity issue, that there are some, particularly I think in council elections, that it was a feedback from somewhere that, if you're not too flush with money, then it's a bit unfair, if you have others who money seems to be no object sometimes. So I also found it interesting that in even overseas and in Ireland, as in April 24th this year, they've got a voluntary ban on election posters now in place in over 150 towns across the country following calls for the elimination of waste generated from candidacy posters. Launched less than 2 months ago, the Poster-Free campaign garnered significant public support with 101 towns banning election posters from their towns earlier in March. Now, this is a voluntary ban, but I don't know whether their rules are the same as ours over here. And the campaign was strongly supported by their local tidy towns groups. So they said that this was a positive response to its initiative, indicating people's frustration with the accumulation of waste generated from candidates' publicity posters. They were saying they had over 600,000 posters, but I think we might have that most probably across our state even. Those posters reportedly produced 360 tonnes of carbon dioxide, the same amount generated if an average car drove non-stop for 592 days, and so on. So I think it might be something perhaps worth putting in, even if it's only just to have some debate around the issue. So I commend it to people that you may like to consider that as one to put to our local government.
Thank you. Any further debate from side? Councillor Groot, would you sum up? That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Perhaps suggesting Councillor Barnett, because it wasn't picked up by way of amendment, but you may wish to consider a motion of notice or a motion to the next general meeting of the Local Government Association about that matter. It's a tricky matter. You've outlined some of the issues.
Yeah.
Taking a waste reduction approach to it is a new angle. It's like item 13.8, LGA consultation on the GAROC draft strategic plan 2019-23 and annual business plan 2019-2020. Recommendation to page 30. Somebody that can move it as it is in the paper.
So moved.
Councillor Groot,
wish to speak to it? Do I second it? Deputy Mayor, wish to speak to it? Any further debate? Being none, there's debate, all those in favour? Against, it's carried. Item 13.9, Eastern Health Authority Draft Annual Business Plan 2019-20, recommendations on page 148, extensive report. Somebody happy to move it as it's presented. Councillor Barnett, wish to speak to it?
Yes, just commend members vote favourably for this. I think it's fairly quite well explained. Even in person, I think it might be explained, but nevertheless. So I just think it seems to be, like part of the business as usual. Just doing perhaps a few new things as they come up in the public health area. I think if you read the draft plan, it gives you a very good overview of what the Eastern Health Authority does across our region. So I commend it to you.
Second. You may wish to speak to it? No. Any further debate?
Sorry.
Any further debate? All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 13.10, Eastern Health Authority Third Budget Review 2018-19, recommendations on page 186. Someone happy to move it? You may wish to speak to it? Second it. Councillor Pearce, wish to speak to it?
Just got a question. But attachment 10, just with the financial statement from July to March 2019, with the salaries and wages, the budget was 1,128,000. The actuals under that by just over 31,000. Yet the super, which is a line of the salary and wages, has increased. So just puzzled by that. One's dropped by 31, the super I would have thought would also drop accordingly.
Page 196?
199.
No, sorry.
Attachment 10.
Is there an explanatory note?
Okay. Anybody able to answer that question? Director?
Through the chair, we can take that question and post it to the board.
So take it on notice. Good to see you reading the papers, Councillor. Why didn't anyone else pick that up? You're wrong. Any further debate? No, that concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Next item might take us a bit to get through, so I'm calling adjournment now for 5 minutes if we can. Adjourn at 9:33. Resume your seats, members. I'm counting the quorum. Including 11 at the quarter electrification railway project, proposed vegetation impacts and nearly offsets, recommendations on page 207. Somebody happy to move it as it's presented in the papers? What do you mean? Speak to it.
Well, we're back onto trees again, and there's been several motions and a lot of discussions tonight. It'd be really interesting to present our agenda to someone in the government environment and say, look how contradictory you are. On the one hand, as we mentioned before, you're saying, hey, more trees. And on the other hand, they're saying not only will we come and rip out trees without necessarily needing to, we'll significantly undervalue what we think they're worth. So based on their calculations, we should better buy a hell of a lot of trees for $100,000 if they're only worth about $48 a piece, which is whatever that might add up to. So probably really not too much more to say about this. I'm glad that we've started this process of putting a lot of pressure on. I do feel again that it was left purposely to the last minute by Dipti to paint us into a corner where there was very little opportunity. And I appreciate that the Mayor has begun the conversation with the relevant minister. And we need to reject this strongly and demand that they come back with something which regionally reflects. If the problem can't be resolved in a way which we prefer, then they come back with something which regionally reflects the value of what's there. Commend the motion and looking forward to other people having a discussion as well.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a second? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I agree with the Deputy Mayor, and just brings to mind that what are they proposing that cost $14,600, like pygmy trees or something? I just can't quite really work it out, like little seedlings or something. You know, it just doesn't add up to me, knowing what we know and what other councils, even interstate and all that, have computed what the values of a tree is. And the other thing that I was going to say scoffed, I think that's a good word, I scoffed when I read in the report that they're not going to do anything about weeds. Well, hello, guess where most of the weeds are, and it's not on our side, it's on their side. So, you know, I really do find this the whole process and what they're proposing, you know, just so it's really quite incredible to me about the way this whole thing's being handled. And I note that the residents have been including lots of their communications to particular ministers and Dipti, so I hope they're getting suitably embarrassed. And also the residents are about to have a petition there, and both the state government on this matter as well. So I'm sure we'll give them, you know, well, I'll personally be seeing that they're given as much hope as they can.
Thank you. Further speakers, Councillor Back.
Look, I understand a lot of the concern around this. We've had this discussion previously. But one of the things I'd really like as a council is to come back with a bit of a good news story along Devonport Terrace and increasing the use of the train station, looking at car parking opportunities and vegetation. I think there's actually a three-way conversation, and I think, yes, I think this is very important because it's reducing the amenity, but it shouldn't be at our cost. I mean, really, these kind of areas should be master planned to improve the amenity, increase ease of parking where possible, so allowing for maybe some vegetation removal for some parking gains, and improve pedestrian and cycle use, because that's the whole point of having high density living next to train stations, because we want people off the roads, hopefully selling their cars and using the trains and their bikes where possible. So in being very firm with the state government, I think we should also say, look, we're willing to partner with you to create a really win-win for the community and for the usage of the train station. Because they're spending all this money on the trains, is anyone extra going to use it? That's the key. So, I mean, I think with the train, near the train stations we're talking about, some of the most underutilised in the whole of Adelaide. So I'd really like to see a positive outcome and in the discussion some of that stuff as well.
Thank you. Further debate? Councillor Griffin.
So just a couple of things. First of all, there is a typo in the recommendation. Recommendation 1, it should say note the report, not the report. I'd hate for us not to. I've got a similar issue to this report as I had to the motion I noticed from Deputy Mayor Larwood, that we're assuming here that the trees are coming out. So we're saying we don't want to accept the 15 grand, but we'll charge you $500,000. We kind of just, it feels like we're just assuming it's going to happen. I think we need to be stronger and actually say, no, it's not going to happen. We're not accepting what you're suggesting. We're not accepting what you're suggesting as the outcome, which is everything goes. But let's actually go back to the drawing board and actually have the conversation about what's the arcing circle of the train of the power lines, and are there other mitigating ways that we can reduce fire risk or any other hazard. So I will be supporting the motion, but I just feel, particularly in the recommendation 2, in terms of the meeting with the Minister, we need to really be putting our point of view across, which is we don't accept what you're saying. $500,000 is not going to rebuy that amenity. It'll buy amenity in probably 20 or 30 years' time, which means that for the next 20 or 30 years, we've got people living along that corridor without mature growth of trees or any sort of shielding from the train line. So I just, maybe for no other reason than historical reasons, that I want to just put on the record that my concern is that we go with an option of don't pull them down. Let's work out where we can prune and where we can thin but not remove in its entirety. And then, subject to that, have a conversation about what the compensation is. Because I'll just repeat what I said, the compensation will not buy back the amenity that the residents are experiencing now. I certainly support the motion.
Thank you. Further debate? I'm going to go from the chair. When I was speaking to the Minister today, I didn't have the letter to hand from his department, and he contested some of the information that we've been putting forward. They want to remove, we're saying they want to destroy 299 trees and shrubs. I said, no, that's outrageous. There's 6 regulated trees and some other things that may be effective. I think so. Giving it doing well enough. Letter says that the department acknowledges there will be an impact to the local community by the removal of vegetation along some sectors of Gawler Railway Line. As a result, the department proposes to offer the City of Prospect a financial contribution based on the above offset values, that's the $89.50 per tree. This is currently estimated at $14,600 based on an estimated total of non-weed amenity vegetation removals. Now, first part of the letter says may be effective. Second part of the letter says, oh, we're going to give you $14,600 because we are going to remove them. And then when you read into it again, and the Minister said this, he said, look, I'm told that half of them are weeds, so we're not going to compensate you for those. Little weeds are kind of little things. Now, I presume he meant that the species that are there are weeds. Now, I've just done the calculations based on $89.50. $14,600 divided by $89.50 comes to $163. In other words, they're stating that there's 135 losses which they intend to make by destroying them down to ground level that they think are weeds. Now, I'd like us to go down Devonport Terrace and ask those residents what they think about that hedge that's been there for 30, 40 years, and ask them if they thought that there was a weed that could just be snipped off at the base. I think it's an absolute insult to us that the department can write to us and call what we've created down there a whole bunch of weeds and dismiss it as if it won't be lost and it won't be compensated for. And that's before we get to the issue. So well, it's not just about replacing a 10-metre tree with a seedling. There's a loss of a 10-metre tree and all the heat and cooling benefits that it has, all the screening benefits it has, which is well beyond the simple replacement cost. And then it's a replacement cost they're offering doesn't come anywhere near what our good staff tell us it costs for trees to be replaced. And it's not like we haven't challenged that, mate. We have pushed back pretty hard. That's what we're told it costs to put a tree in our city. So there's a whole pile of stuff here which just isn't adding up. And I think Councillor Baker puts it quite rightly. It's just terrible that we're in this position where we look like we're lining up for a stoush. I mean, I'd much rather be in a position where we're having a discussion on how to make this really successful. That is where this council started. It's where I started as the mayor, it's where the CEO started, the team started. So please come and talk to us. We want to make this street look fantastic. Please don't touch any of our trees because they're really important to us. Talk to us. They offered us, promised us a tree survey or a vegetation survey and never came back with it. What they came back with when we demanded to know where they're at was this letter and a map with lots of blank crosses on it. So we've got some work to do to restore, I agree, to stop the destruction and nobody's moved an amendment to actually state that, but elsewhere, and to restore the relationship to one of working together. And then you get to the third base, which is how we make this amazingly successful for us and for them. There's no point having an electrified train if there's no patrons on it. And that's something that we all should be interested in doing so they're not driving our roads. So I think it's incredibly disappointing, and this motion only goes part of the way, in my view, to dealing with the issues. It doesn't talk about the weed species, doesn't talk about the insult of calling it trees and shrubs weeds, nor does it talk about the losses and the fact that we really don't want that to happen at all. If it does, there needs to be fairer compensation for it. So that's me from the chair. If someone wants to try and make that happen, so be it. Any further debate? That being the case, back to you, Deputy Mayor. Would you sum up?
Might sum up just by borrowing a couple of lines from someone who wrote to us for a field this week. Your risk, and maybe we could use some of these words, your risk management is wrong and out of control. The risk to this tree posed to public safety was minuscule, the benefits to public amenity were immense, and it's just the latest in an ongoing process. The beautiful tree line, green tunnel in the street I invested in and moved into 10 years ago is gone. You have destroyed it and it won't return in my lifetime. So that was from Ben Miller from Hunt Street. Those emails. So whilst that's a different situation, the sentiment there is raw and real for him, and that's the same that the people of Devonport Terrace are experiencing as well. So unfortunately there wasn't an amendment moved to this motion, so what it is what it is. We have got the other motion which hopefully goes some way towards calling a halt, but we can see the impact of this kind of situation has on residents, and as the Mayor pointed out, a lifetime of work for some people will be destroyed, and they'll be left with nothing for 10 to 15, 20 years at least, and we're the ones who are going to bear the brunt of that. So look forward to seeing this move forward, and us being involved in continuing on with this fight.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Yes, carried unanimously. I don't want to go there, unfortunately. 13.3, traffic management around schools, recommendation on page 267 and 8. Somebody happy to move it?
I moved. I do. I'll start off as I did the motion on waste to thank staff for a very good report. I think it was quite thorough, and again picked up a number of issues that I'd asked in the motion to I guess reflect some of the issues we've got across a number of schools in the city of Prospect around traffic at pick-up and drop-off times in particular. I think I'm not going to speak at length to this because I think it all makes sense. The annual meetings I think is a very, very good start with the schools. I just want to encourage staff and with council administration to also pick up the childcare centres which sit alongside schools in those areas. So a number of those schools also have on the same campus a complementary but separate organisation which is Generate Childcare Centre. They have similar issues, but they also have different issues, given that the people taking children to the childcare centre, the children are often a lot younger, and so kiss and drop isn't appropriate. You can't just kiss and drop an 8-month-old kid out of the car into a childcare centre. So they have very different issues, and they sometimes conflict with the issues that the schools are having. So it complicates matters somewhat, but I think it's really important to better. I would also encourage the first meeting to happen soon, and for us to, after tonight's, presuming the motion gets up, that we write to schools very soon to let them know that's happening. There is a lot of angst out there still with at least 2 schools that I'm aware of, and I suspect across all of them that council aren't seen to be doing what they think council should be doing. I think this report goes some way of trying to describe the role of police, of council and of the schools. But in the concluding statements, we repeat it twice in the report, but it does say providing a safe road environment for adult and child pedestrians, cyclists and motorists is the responsibility of all people, absolutely. Council has and will continue to work closely with public and private schools and police to share the responsibility of educating motorists. Sorry, actually, that's not the quote I want to give you. Where's the quote I want to give you? Actually, that's right. The greater responsibility is generally directed to council. So councils are seen, and we are now agreeing to that in this report. The councils generally, it's agreed that we are one of the primary responses to traffic issues around schools. So what I said this time 2 months ago was there's 3 parts of this issue. There's the school, there's the police in terms of enforcement, and there's council in terms of enforcement and planning around traffic. And so I think we all have responsibility. The only other comment I was going to make is the reference to the Way to Go strategy that DIPTI are rolling out. There was a comment in there that the Prospect Primary School aren't actually involved in that. And I'll give you Exhibit A. Your Honour, which is a photo taken this afternoon by the principal of Prospect Primary School, which is the way to go sign as you leave the school. So speaking to her this afternoon, I believe that the school is actually a member of the Way to Go program. So that's her understanding of it. But if Council has a different understanding, I can take that back to the school through the principal, because she understands they are part of the Way to Go, which means all schools are either part of it or are interested in being part of it. So I commend the motion. I thank again the staff, the Director and his staff for preparing this report. I think it's very thorough, and I certainly commend the motion to the group here tonight.
Thank you. Have a second. Councillor Rick, would you speak to it?
Yeah, look, I fully support the intent of where this is going. Just a quick question from administration. Will annual meetings be enough, or is it I guess anticipated to be annual to start with and then more regular meetings to occur if there's an extra need? Can I seek some application on that?
Through the Chair, as mentioned by Councillor Group, we'll have the first meeting quite quickly. We'll soon establish whether we need to have more or less than an annual meeting. We put it in there at this stage. We'll play it by ear.
That's how I read it. Thank you. Look, I think it's a really positive step overall. I know there have been a number of issues too raised to me during and after the election campaign around, the surrounding streets and the traffic around pick up and drop off times at Nailsworth Primary. So I think it's to be collaborative from both schools working with council and also council working with the community and communities working with schools. We can bring everyone together and try and thrash out a few of these issues. I think it'll be a real positive in the future.
Thank you. Any further debate? You need to sum up, Councillor Britt. Concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Item 13.14, order to borrow local government finance authority to click recommendations on page 274. I'd be happy to move. We borrow $5 million. I said it quickly, just not because it's... yeah. We do it every day. Deputy Mayor?
The Mayor who borrow $5 million.
Do I have a second? Mr. Booth, would you speak to it?
I do not.
Further debate? So just ask a question from the Chair. The local government finance authority have a history of recommending fixed rates. It does say in the report that the rate they're offering anticipates a fall in the Reserve Bank rate. Is there a reason why we wouldn't push harder for a variable rate?
Through the Chair, the anticipated reduction is already been factored in the 10-year rate. So the indicative rate that we have presented on page 276, 3.5 and 3.75 has already factored through the projected reduction. In terms of variable rate, so when we look at the PNI, we worked out that I guess the most cost effective at the moment for us will be the 15-year, to lock in the 15-year rate. We've done a comparison whether or not can we pay off the loan earlier or not, whether it's 10 years and 15 years. And it worked out that 15 years is the best. So should we do a variable rate, continue to do a variable rate?
They offer us interest rate on a variable rate.
It is really up to us, but we fear that, we thought 3.75 is actually an appropriate rate for us to lock in terms of the risk, whether or not that 3.6 may increase or not.
Thank you. Further question, maybe been around too long. If we want to pay this off earlier, often there's a penalty in these arrangements. Is that the case with this loan, or are we able to pay it off earlier should we win the local government lottery?
Yep. Through the Chair, if we have locked in any fixed term funds here, yes, there will be a penalty for any fixed term rate. Any fixed term loan, that there will be a penalty.
Right. And perhaps finally, just to get some pulse back into this motion, I understand, and can you clarify whether the balance, the 3.7 million you're still going to borrow towards the end of the project, is that a chance for us to consider greater flexibility in terms of variability or paying off early or something else. So this is the baseline, but we can look to that balance of the loan for those sort of added benefits.
Yeah, through the chair, that's exactly what we intend to do. Out of the 8.7 mil that we have budgeted, we are locking in the 5 mil, and the rest of it we are just going to use through our cash advance venture, basically like credit card. So when the rate comes in, we just try to delay borrowing as late as we can. So that has been the method that we've been used, and that is to graduate the way through. We can actually have a projected savings. Mind you, we haven't paid a lot of construction costs, about 350 savings in interest rate. That is through managing through our working capital.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Rick.
I guess too, so I mean a 3.75% rate obviously seems quite reasonable. Have we had a look at if there are variable loans available, what that rate would be? Are we looking at 3.75 fixed versus say 4.75 variable? Have we got anything where we can compare? Because if it's quite significantly higher, then it's probably better to go fixed, but we just don't have that information.
Through the chair, the variable loan is 3.6% at the moment. The variable rate, the cash advance debenture, basically is based on the credit card rate. Basically, the variable rate is 3.6%. So we are not fixing, that is 3.6%. By fixing 15 years, it's 3.75%.
So it's actually I'm just a bit confused. Like I would naturally assume that if we're going to be fixed, that you would get a lower rate to be locked in. Is that not right?
No.
Is there something to consider then? Or why?
Right.
Yeah.
Through the chair, I think when we look at the analysis, we just want to lock in something 3.75 compared to 3.6. Major finance have done an analysis and look at the risk. What would the interest movement be if the interest has gone up? And 3.75 for us is secure for us. And when we look at our long-term financial plan, that has a certain guarantee that we can have. So with the remaining 3.7%, we're willing to look at just stay on variable as long as possible.
Right. Sorry, I misinterpreted what you said before. Sorry, I do apologise.
Further debate? Back to you. Councillor Lowe, Deputy Mayor, you should sum up.
I've learned a new word tonight, concierge loan. It's quite interesting to read what that is.
Not best.
No, it's credit concierge loan. And I think that the position the team has taken with regards to the certainty around a fixed rate is probably, we don't necessarily play the odds here in local government, so I think that that's a dependable amount of money that we can agree on and forecast, so I think that's a reasonable approach myself. Happy to turn the motion and seeing if we're going to support it or not.
If you please debate, all those in favour? Yes, it's carried unanimously. Wasn't very convincing. It worked, whatever. Firing.
No psychology.
15, the Community Hub Library Innovation Centre facility naming, recommendations on page 280.
So moved.
You should speak to it.
I would. How exciting. Now, I'm not sure if you mentioned this there at the beginning of the meeting, but it is Reconciliation Week this week. And so some council members were at the Reconciliation Breakfast on Monday. I was in my day job capacity. And I think it's really apt that it is Reconciliation Week and we are considering this motion tonight and hopefully it will be approved tonight. I know that we spent a lot of time, we've probably spent more time on naming than we have on the colour of the tables or the type of tiles we're using or lots of other information and things we had to do in the CLIC facility. But I'm really excited that we're taking what I think is a really strong leadership position with this. And I know that not everyone around the table will necessarily agree with this. With this naming, we've had lots of debate on a couple of different names. But for me, calling this facility Payinthi is a really strong leadership statement around our First Nations people and how we can recognise their ownership of the land that we're on. And we say that at the beginning of every council meeting, we say that often at the beginning of meetings. And for me, this is a very practical expression of that acknowledgement of country by naming this facility something with a Kaurna name. So I'm really proud to move this tonight. I just want to point out that the community reference group have been along with this as well, and I know they've had lots of debates, and I've been involved in it in the past, and Deputy Mayor is involved now with the community reference group, and I think that I want to say thank you to them for their input and commentary about it. I've had some comments which are positive, I've had some comments that are not so positive, and I think that's the nature of any decision such as this. I do have one question though. In the artwork in the report, it does reference painting, and it has a byline underneath it's good prospects and Community Hub Library Innovation Centre. Is that the intent, or was that just an artist's mock-up for the purposes of the report?
Through the chair, the images on page 284.
Yes.
I believe we put them in as options, but through the workshop discussion, the option with good prospects was preferred.
Okay. So I just want to be clear then, tonight we are approving the name, or we are moving, if this motion gets up, the naming of the facility as painting. However, we are not moving anything in relation to the artist industry, artists' illustrations, imagery.
Through the chair, in terms of this essential directory signage, that's still something to be designed. At the moment, it's been designed by Chris Newby, into designer, with all credit to him. So this was really just for a demonstration.
Okay, no, that's right. I'm sure it won't be designed that well, but I'm sure it'll be planned very well, Chris. So the only other question I had was in relation to the planter box that's going to be in front of the building. I think I read in here somewhere that 1 to 8 was still going to be on that. Is that correct?
Through the chair, the overall concept of signage has always been the name or the address in the planter box. Coming out of the workshop, there was talk about the name being in an alternate location, which left the opportunity for the planter box to retain the 128 or the street address, because the majority of groups around the room had spoken about, regardless of what we call it or how we sign it, it's important to have an identifier so that as you're driving down the street, you can see that address. So the intent remains to put a 128 in the planter box, with the recommendation suggesting that there be further work done on a design for potential fin sign or something similar for me.
So I'm not seeing anything in this report about 1 to 8 apart from the mention in the report. And so that might be subject to a different workshop conversation or another report to council. I presume we're not approving 1 to 8 in the planter box tonight. If we did do that, my personal view would be 1 to 8 Prospect Road rather than 1 to 8. Otherwise, we're going to start having mixed messages about signage. But as I said, I can't see it in the recommendations. So I'm presuming we're not approving that tonight. Can I maybe ask as a question, because I'm seeing maybe a hesitation?
The chair, it's not in items 1 to 5. That's what we've been asked to move. It would become a resolution if it's supported. That's what the CEO will act upon. And the item 5 says that there'll be a further report to us about the preferred external signage option.
Okay, so I'll work on that basis. So look, as I said, I'm really excited. I think if this gets up tonight, that it is a really strong reflection of the leadership of the City of Prospect, and is a really important step I think we're making in Reconciliation Week as well. So certainly commend it to you.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Backer, would you speak to it?
Yeah, just briefly. Look, in Councillor Harris's absence, I think we're all very proud, but certainly Councillor Alan Harris would be very proud to see this go forward. I think it's suitable for a building of this standing in our community, and it's a good opportunity for communication about the Kaurna language and have it embedded in our community. I'm really keen, point 5, how the external signage looks. I think it's incredibly important that we are getting back to the architects, because I think one of the things that was quite key from the initial drawings is that the signage formed, I guess, part of the building design, and often with, you know, architects and names of buildings, there's something kind of intrinsic about where it's located and all those kind of things. And I know this is just something that's been put up, but we've got, you know, baby blue fins and white walls and lime green. It's a very odd colour combination, but anyway. To have a very sort of black sign on a white wall that's being put there as a feature by the architect would be a huge overlook, and I'm sure some consultation with the architect, and I don't really see that there is design talked about. And I know we've been looking at this 3,000 here for design and signage, but maybe a question, is the architect being consulted about the location and the type of signage?
Through the chair, absolutely, and the architect will be the one designing the external signage.
Yep, happy with that.
Good, Councillor. Any further debate? Councillor Ripp.
I'd actually like to move an amendment if possible, please. Follows on from a previous meeting. I would like proposing that the name be sort of going to, item 2, that's right, that the name be Payenthi Prospect Library and Community Centre. Okay. While that's typed up, I'll talk to it. So it was from here. So Payenthi Prospect Library and Community Centre. Yeah. And while that's been, do I talk, to it or?
Yeah, carry on.
Yes. So again, I'm moving the same amendment as I did last time. Whilst I didn't really appreciate the previous workshop discussion, I was actually quite disappointed initially to see the names that, I guess, the names that were proposed, and this name that was discussed at the last meeting wasn't proposed, and it was just said, oh yes, but that'll just be looked at as a descriptor. Considering it was a name that was, I guess, hotly debated at the last meeting, I was quite disappointed in part of the format of that last workshop discussion. And I think even the Mayor made some, if I remember rightfully, made some commentary that the people, I guess having the name there with the potential logos was actually quite confusing, because we weren't there to approve the logo design. I think the Mayor said we were there to approve the name and then would go to the logo design later. So that bit was, I think, confusing at the workshop, and also I was disappointed that it was just the 3 names that were put up for discussion and not this name as well that was hotly debated at the last meeting. I love the name Payenthi in terms of the many good prospects. I think that's exciting, but I also think that from the feedback I've had overall in the community, that we need people driving down there to visibly see what it is. Payenthi is fantastic. We have a great story to sell on that, but I am a firm believer that we need to call the building what it is. It's our Prospect Library and it's our community centre. And I think that's really, really important that people driving by understand that. If people drive by and don't understand exactly what the building is, they won't, in my opinion, necessarily, whatever we call it, they won't necessarily grab that name, Google it to find out what it is. I'm naturally curious. I'm a Googler, so I will go and think, what's it? But a lot of people won't. And I think for our key building, Payenthi excites me, but I think we do need to clearly identify that it's our library and community centre as well. So that's why I am proposing that the name be Payenthi Prospect Library and Community Centre.
Thank you. As per previous proposed amendments, I'll see. Well, I'll ask the mover and seconder if they're happy to incorporate. If not, it becomes an amendment. So, mover, Councillor Group, happy to incorporate?
Sorry, Councillor, no.
Right, it becomes an amendment. So, seconder, Councillor Barnett.
Yes. Yeah, and I must admit I was a bit confused when I read the report that came to us after having been at the workshop, all of them, discussing it. And just, you know, I'm fully in favour of incorporating Payenthi, but just to have it by itself, you know, it's as outlined by Councillor Ripp, you know, and then what are we going to have then underneath it? You know, like good prospects somewhere or other. But at any rate, my main point is that we have a dual naming protocol and we are now going directly against it. I don't know whether it's a policy or a protocol. Every other one that we've given a dual name to, it's had Prospect Gardens, Ngānu Wira, Charles Kane, I remember Possum, Pando Yurta, a Prospect Oval, and I can't just off the top of my head remember that. And now we're going the opposite way. Now we may say, oh, well, that means that it's more important than all the other ones that we've given dual names to. So I am just a wee bit concerned about that aspect of it. And my preference would be, I don't mind, okay, we're going against the dual naming protocol or policy, but to just have Painty by itself, I mean, you know, I don't think that it's going to quite cut the mustard with trying to show, you know, we've spent all these millions of dollars, and then it looks like we're frightened to give it a name, you know, like whatever. So I'm more in favour of the Painty, say, dash Prospect Library, Community Centre or Civic Centre or whatever else we think tonight or whenever.
Further debate on the amendments? Councillor Webb.
I like Painty as it is. I think if we incorporate Prospect Library and Community Centre, what about the Town Hall? So do we need to mention that in there as well? It's a difficult one, but I think I've had some conversations with local residents, and I have you know, thrown that word out, and they're like, oh wow, what does that mean? So it's about education. Yeah, I won't be supporting that amendment, sorry.
Further debate? Yeah. Mayor Lowe?
Can I just clarify what we're debating at the moment so I can shape my debate accordingly?
The amendment is on the screen. It's in italics that the words are added after the word Painty. Prospect Library and Community Centre, with the intent that the name of the building is Painty dash Prospect Library and Community Centre.
So if that's the case, then I wouldn't be supporting the amendment. I think, with all due respect to Councillor Barnett's commentary, I think we have found a name. It's Painty. That's what the report's presented. That's the end result. And I think we have been told we're not frightened to call it something. We're actually calling it something, and that's Painty. I must admit that I've got full circle on the concept since it was first raised, and mainly because I wish we'd come up with the name earlier on and not later in the piece, not for anything against the actual name itself, because I think it's uncannily appropriate. I think it's suitable to leave it as it is and use other ways of letting people know what happens there. There's been various comments throughout the journey around people calling it whatever they want anyway, you know, referring it to all sorts of things that they typically might refer to it as now anyway. So I think that full circle for me is that it is a bold name. It is challenging. It does require us to tell a story, and nothing else that's come to mind has achieved that outcome. So I road tested it myself amongst my family and friends, and I didn't get anyone who was against it. I got people who were inquisitive about it, and I got people who said, oh yeah, it's a good fit. I didn't get anyone who wanted to go and tear the sign down and burn it because they were so against it. So for me, I'd be quite comfortable just calling it Painty, and we can refer to what happens in that building in other ways, so I wouldn't be supporting that amendment.
I can't speak to it, can I? So second it? No?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, look, I'd like to support it, and I come back to the fact that we had a wonderful deputation for upstanding, and it's a common sense descriptor for what the building is, and I don't really care kind of where it appears, but it is the Prospect Library and Community Centre. Town Hall will have Town Hall written on the top of it, and I am very supportive of Mayor's idea, and that I'm not scared of a few bits and pieces of signage. I just want people to be able to find the front door and know that they're going to the right place. That's my biggest concern. And so library and community centre and the Newmarch Gallery have to be very clear for people as they enter buildings, and I'm sure our team are all over that. But certainly as it appears when you're doing a Google search, that's really, and I guess as a communication tool when we're communicating to community groups, you know, because this is also a community centre. So is it the Nailsworth Community Centre or is it the Payinthi, Library and Community Centre? So I think it's very important that we are clear on what that building is, because we need people in our community to understand from all walks of life that this is what it's for and this is the function of the building. So I'd be supportive of the motion.
Thank you. I believe I can speak to the amendment as well. So look, I won't be supporting the amendment. I'm a bit disappointed because I feel like we've been down this track a meeting or two ago. And for me, this is not about dual naming. This is far from dual naming. This is not a dual naming opportunity. And I think we talked about that as a council, both maybe in a workshop, but also in the council meeting when we considered the previous naming options, where we said we don't want to make this a dual naming building. We want to actually lead by saying this is an Indigenous word and using Indigenous language to describe what we have. And I think that's why I'm really strongly in favour of just using the word Payinthi, not to mention a very, very long fin out the front if we include the whole word, including the other bits. I think, as mentioned by some of the other councillors, it is more than a library, it's more than a community centre. So it's a town hall, it's a civic centre, it's a commercial tenancy, it's a cafe, it's a whole lot of other, it's a meeting place, it's a whole lot of other things. And so for me, Prospect Library and Community Centre doesn't encapsulate what we want it to be, because I think we want it to be a lot more than that. And sure, if you Google Payinthi today, you might find a definition of good prospects. But if this was approved and in a year's time you Google Payinthi, you'll find this vibrant activity happening on Prospect Road, which is what we have. And I think, we talked earlier about how we nudge people's behaviour around waste and how we nudge our residents' behaviour about a whole lot of things, about development, about heritage, about character, about parking in narrow streets. This is just another educative opportunity. So I don't think you need the 4 or 5 words behind it. I think it's just about how we educate people for what it is. I think as soon as you say the word prospect in that, anyone east of Mainmouth Road, I think it does create that, that's the Prospect thing, not the Nailsworth thing, not the Sefton Park thing, not the Medindy Gardens thing. So I think not having the word prospect and having a word that isn't, it says good prospects, of course, but having a name that isn't the word prospect as a front and centre is, I think, also a bit of a way of trying to be inclusive of our entire community, because we know that as a result of this decision there have been divisions in terms of where the library sits and where it doesn't. I think by calling it something with the word prospect in it will reignite some of those feelings and maybe reignite the debate. The last thing I want to say is I think of other buildings, the Louvre, Eiffel Tower, Tandemia, they don't all have bylines. I don't think you need a byline. Sure, there's going to be an educative opportunity up front where we're going to have to talk to people about what it is, but let's create the brand of Payinthi. I think as soon as we have a byline, we water that brand down, because people won't be challenged by the word and they'll look at Prospect Library and Community Centre and that's what it will become. And I'm almost of the view that we shouldn't bother with Payinthi if we have those other 5 words, because Payinthi will pale into insignificance because people will go to what's familiar with them, which is library and community. And I think do that, we've missed a huge opportunity, and I think all the work around trying to be good leaders in this space will be undone by having the byline. So that's my view. I won't be supporting it, but I'll certainly adhere to the democratic principles of the majority of the group. So.
From the chair, just I'll let you go now. I'm not quite sure where to start. I just can't believe how many workshops and work we've done on this to come to tonight what I thought would just be a snap, to be honest. Perhaps to go back to click, I don't know. Just joking. Originally when we went through this, I like 128 and then I like 128 Prospect Road. I think Mark sort of talked a lot that we're probably rushing into it too much. I think that was his comments. And I thank you for that, because I think I'm now really happy with Payinthi.
and possibly we could have voted 128 3 meetings ago, and we lost that opportunity, because I think it's a really, really bold statement. I don't think it needs those extra words, and that's not giving it what it is anyway, which Click does, or does, but we don't want to. So I just won't be supporting that amendment.
Thank you. I know it won't be a split vote unless one of you runs out of the room or something worse happens, but I can't agree more with the last two speakers. I think we missed a real opportunity to name the Thomas Street Centre. I'm not sure how many of you could actually recall what it says in the sign outside that building. It says a lot of things. It says a lot of things, and it's completely unmemorable. All my interactions with marketing people and graphic designers have taught me over time that signs with lots of words in them just don't get read. They're just too hard. I have to have a graphic symbol, comes to the back of Lux, which clearly says that's what it is. Like a word sign, no, universal. Or you have a single word or something really crystal clear. As soon as you start adding words to it, people don't read it, they just see that. And I think I'm quite comfortable with this being quite bold and just having a single word which at a glance kind of begs the question, because the question leads to an answer. And I think the answer is really powerful. I think the right place to have a descriptor, and this is what we discussed at the workshop, is on the directory board. And I'm contemplating this, wouldn't even put these words at the top of the board, because it alludes to that being the main event and the other things being not the main event. I think the directory board will be incredibly powerful. We actually got a really good spot to put it, right by the stairs, right by the front door. And that will describe all the stuff happening in the building. So no one's going to get lost. You go to this function at the library at Pinthe, you go to this function at the art gallery at Pinthe, you go to this function at the town hall at Pinthe. I get to the front door and I go, I'm at Pinthe, I'm in the right place, because the town hall's on level G. Or I'm at the tenancy on level 2, whatever it is. And I think that board is where we're going to have the chance to spell out all the fantastic stuff that happens in this building, including the staff, the reception, where you pay bills, where you need planning officers, where the kids go for a long time, where the toy library is, where the history collection is. I mean, there's just so many things happening in the building. That's what's going to make it fantastic. I'm also worried about the size of the sign, not just that it's got lots of words, but that it won't be a statement. It'll just be like, how on earth do you design a really good sign that's got so many words in it? I'd be quite concerned that it wouldn't be a design statement, and it'd be a sheet of stuff that's got words applied to it. I think that'd be a lost opportunity. And this, well, it doesn't really matter to make it huge. And just while I've got the opportunity, I've to speak back to the motion again. I'm really concerned about the retention of the word of the 128 and garden bed. I just think it's unnecessary to have of that scale, and it looks like we could make our mind up about what we call the building. If 128's at the bottom of the word Pinthe, it's in a vertical sign, terrific. If it's applied next to the directory board at the top, terrific. Would be the one building in the street with a number on it, but it doesn't have to be prominent. I would have thought we could save the money that we were going to spend on that and spend it on the vertical sign. I think the sign's got to be really prominent, so I conclude by saying that. We're going to make a statement, it's got to be a big, bold statement you can't miss. If we are diminutive with the word Pinthe, it won't get seen, it won't get used, the question won't get asked, the story won't get told. And that's what's so good we can get. The amendment, put to bed and get back to the core question, and then let the staff move on with designing the directory board and the other bits of signage. And that's important. But the thing is, let's just speak to the amendment. And there's no summing up with the amendment. So that concludes the debate. All those in favour of the amendment? All those against the amendment?
Call for division.
Amendment is lost. We'll put that aside. A division on amendment. So we do that. Yeah. We call for a division. All those in.
We all sit, I think, don't we? I don't know.
We
remember.
I
I think the no stands.
All those in favour indicate so of the amendment, and all those against the amendment stand.
The no stand.
You're still lost.
But thank you, Councillor Rippon, because you showed forever that the power of debate. Councillor Barnett seconded your amendment and then voted against it. That shows that things can happen during debate. I think it's very important. Not meant to be cheeky about it, but that's what nearly really happened. Back to the main event, which is still unchanged. We've had Councillor Fruit move it, Councillor Backer speak to it, Councillor Rip speak to it. Are there any other speakers to the motion? They don't need to do it. Just ask. That's the case. Councillor Green,
very briefly, look, I think that was a really good debate. So I know that we've ended up at the same result, but I think it's really important to be able to have these conversations. So thank you, Councillor, for putting up something alternative, even though I didn't agree with it. But look, I just want to say I'm really proud. Hopefully this will go through with a unanimous vote. I'm really proud to be part of this council that does this. I was with Councillor Harris at 6 a.m. this morning at Adelaide Airport. We had a brief exchange. We were both flying in different directions, but I know he's very disappointed he couldn't be here, and thank you, Councillor Backer, for mentioning him, because it did prompt me. He was very, very keen to make sure that people were aware that he would have voted for PNP, and is very proud also to be part of the council that would do that. So let's tell the story. Let's use this as an opportunity to go out and talk to our residents, talk to ratepayers, talk to businesses, talk to anyone who listens about what PNP is, and I think we should be absolute ambassadors for that. I commend the motion to you.
That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. What was all the fuss about?
He says we don't debate. Who said we can't change?
Motion 10:30 members. Appreciate a motion to extend to a time probably 11. We haven't moved that way. Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Barnett. Any discussion? All those in favour? Against? Carried.
That's right.
Not yet. Item 13:16, the leasing of retail and commercial space for the Community Hub Library and Innovation Centre. Covered in the report, can't change. Recommendations on page 288. Someone happy to move in its current form. Deputy Mayor.
I'm happy to move in this current form.
Wish to speak to it?
Not no.
Seconder. Yes, wish to speak to it?
Just read the report. It sounds very good. It appears that we've got tenants. So very happy with that news.
Any further speakers? Councillor Backer.
Yeah, I'm also very excited that we have got tenants, which is great, and particularly around the retail space and the activation of some of the space in front of the town hall. So I feel actually quite responsible as the council that's constructing this beautiful building without any landscaping at the front. And I'm hoping that that will come back on the table somewhere. But it is still quite a hostile space in front of where the town hall and the old institute building near Chibo's. And I'd be really excited to see a retailer that can invest in some amenity on the street for people to be able to sit down and enjoy actually on the street itself. So I think that would be a really good outcome.
Further debate? Just from the chair, just to point out the really important obvious words here, negotiate a minimum of $100,000 total rent. The really important part of this is that we didn't have a mechanism for the CEO to sign the leases, which meant that there's a risk that the tenant would have to wait for it to come back for a council meeting, and that would, we might miss an opportunity to button someone down at the right time. So I would hope we'd get more than that, but we didn't want to delay the process by coming back with a different number. So just to understand, the most important part of this motion is that there's a delegation to the CEO to sign up, and there's a sensible number put there which hopefully the team will see. The rest of the report is there for you. Any further debate?
I was just going to somewhat cheekily make a comment that in the attachment, which is I'm madly trying to find, it references the representation review and the return towards as part of the Government Gazette on the left-hand page down the bottom.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
You see it? I did.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor, sitting there to sum up. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Protocol now, items 15.1 to 4, so just run through. If they're not withdrawn, we'll move them on block. Does anybody wish to withdraw item 15.1 strategic plan 2020 information report? And back to all sorts of things. Right. 15.2, connect the city's metropolitan-wide sensor network. Right. 15.3, the appointment of the acting chief executive officer. No. And items 15.4, the Community Hub Library Innovation Centre project update.
So moved.
Then move more on block. Councillor Cribb. Got a seconder. Councillor Ripp. There's no debate, and then move on block. All those in favour? Against, they're all carried unanimously. Reports, no, we've done that. You see there actually. Oh, we are up to Council Diary. 3 days there, North Adelaide versus Adelaide footy game. They do play really good quarters, North Adelaide. So make sure you catch one this season. And they are the reigning premiers. They are the reigning premiers, okay? Just don't
hold on to that. Yeah.
Taylor Walker, you playing for it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll get a crowd, trust me.
I'm just wondering
I'm hoping you will be.
whether he's there, whether he's standing on the field or playing, I'm not sure what you'd like to request. Citizenship ceremony on the 12th of June. Welcome to you Aussies and the North Adelaide versus third game again at the Yard. General business, sovereign. Urgent business, anything of an urgent nature, something which is to get our attention. Discuss with Councillor back of that if you can wait for the next meeting, so no stress. If there's nothing else, there's no confidential items, meeting is closed.